Hi, David.
There you are. Hi, Katrina. How are you?
Good.
Okay. I can hear you. I can see you. Your logo is good, and you're good to go.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. See you in a bit.
See you soon.
All righty.
Hey, David, can I get a checkup too, like that?
Yeah. Where are you at?
I'm gonna turn it on now.
Okay. You want to do a share screen?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
You want to test that? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
Thanks. Let's see. You good?
Yep. Good.
Oh,
Full
great.
screen. You're good.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Hi, Michael.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good. I can see you. I can hear you. And Yeah, and your logo was good to go.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. See you in a bit.
Hi, David. Just making sure you can see and hear me.
Hi, Stacy. Yes, I can see you. I can hear you, and your logo is good to go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, David. Do we have everyone?
Hello, Chair. Yes, we do. If I can have all the commissioners on video, please. We still have a few seconds to start at 6:30, so hang on tight.
I just wanted to make sure we were good to go because we have an action-packed evening.
Yes.
I'm missing Vice Chair Jones.
She has checked in. She is
Hi
here.
there.
There she
There
is.
she is.
Hello.
Okay, and we are live on all streaming services on cable channel 10, so we are all good to go from the technical standpoint. So whenever you're ready, Chair.
Thank you, David. Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission. It is Thursday, October 21st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. And with that, let's move on to item 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. Secretary Gillig, would you please lead us?
Thank you, Chair. If you would please mute yourselves, hand over your heart, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Item 3, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Vincent,
Here.
Commissioner Thomas,
Here.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Here.
Commissioner Odetta.
Here.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Here.
Vice Chair Jones.
Here.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Here.
and we have a quorum.
And I forgot our sheet music. So I'm going to take a step back and read the following. In an effort to protect public health and prevent the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus, AB 361 has authorized public meetings to take place via teleconference because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing. This planning commission is being conducted via teleconference on the city's website and is also provided on a wide array of streaming media platforms to offer access to the public to the fullest extent possible. WehoTV staff have confirmed that this planning commission meeting is currently streaming successfully on Spectrum Channel 10 and online at weho.org/WehoTV. In addition, and as a courtesy, this meeting is also successfully streaming on the city's YouTube channel at youtube.com/WehoTV and on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Android TV. WehoTV staff monitor this broadcast on all platforms throughout the meeting and will notify the Planning Commission Secretary should broadcast disruptions arise. Please do not interrupt the live meeting by calling or texting the planning commissioners about difficulties viewing the meeting. In addition, you may call in to listen to this meeting by dialing 669-900-6833. The meeting ID is 869-4151-8924 and press the pound sign. Please understand that internet speeds, device reliability, third-party platform reliability, and individual or personal technical issues are out of the scope of this broadcast. If you are experiencing viewing difficulties while watching this live stream, please reload the page or visit weho.org/WehoTV to access our official live stream and to view a list of other available streaming options and a guide to troubleshoot your connection. If you continue to experience difficulties, you can also call 323-848-3151. Okay. Let's move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. Vice Chair Jones.
Yes, I would actually like to recommend or request that we move item 10C to our last item of business, as I believe you have a recusal on that item, and move
Okay.
our new business item 11A up to the place where 10C would be now.
Thank you. So moved. Is there a second? I'll second it. Commissioner Thomas? Did you have something to add?
I was second. No, I was just seconding.
Oh, okay. David, would
Sorry,
you
I have
please call the vote?
one item.
Oh, yes.
Could-
Okay, Mr. Lombardi.
Chair Hoopengarner, could you please repeat which order the,
So the
We're going to
order of
reorganize
business
it.
would be 10A, 10B, 11A, and then back to 10C.
okay. Sorry, I'm just flipping to the page here. I think it was 10 D, is that still last?
There is no 10D.
Sorry, 10. Okay. The item that's Sunset 80, it's 11A, Sunset Boulevard. Okay,
That
that's
will be our
after.
third
Thank you.
item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, David, would you please call the vote?
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Dutta.
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones,
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Yes.
and the agenda is amended as amended as presented for October 21st, 2021.
Thank you, David. Item 5, approval of the minutes of the October 7th, 2021 hearing. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Chair Jones, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Lombardi, thank you. David, would you call the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Dutta.
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent,
I abstained since I was absent.
thank you. Vice Chair Jones,
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Yes.
and the minutes for October 7th, 2021 are approved as presented, noting Commissioner Vincent as abstaining.
Thank you, David. Item 6, public comment. At this time, the public is invited to speak on topics relating to the Planning Commission. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and your city of residence. David, do we have public?
Thank you, Chair. I received no public speaker slips on this item. If there is anybody on the platform with this who is listening, if you'd like to speak on a general item at this time, please hit *9 for me. That would let me know that you'd like to speak, and we can give you 3 minutes to speak. Okay, I do have one item. This is from the phone call ending in 5052. Go ahead, state your name and your city of residence, and you have 3 minutes. You can *6 from your telephone, *6, and then your.
My name is Richard Lewis. I did.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, yeah, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I live at 1120 North Clark Street. And just one quick comment. If they're going to build something there, I approve of this plan because it's architecturally pleasing. I said I live at 1120 North Clark Street. If they're going to build something on that block, I believe it should be architecturally pleasing instead of just another block.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. If you're wishing to speak on the item for 8850 Sunset, that will be coming up in a couple of items. This is a time for general public comment.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, David?
There is, hang on one moment, please. No, I think that was, I'm sorry, that was all, Chair. That was our last public speaker, it looks like, for the general item.
Bear with me 1 minute. We have ambient noise in the neighborhood that I'm going to try and mute. My apologies. There's a very unfortunate puppy that gets constrained to their home and cries very loudly, and I wish I could rescue it, but I don't know where it is.
Commissioner Hoopengarner, for what it's worth, I can't hear anything, but
Okay,
maybe that's because
good.
I'm hard of hearing.
Well, maybe my noise canceling microphone is actually doing its job then. Okay, my apologies. Item 7, Director's Report.
Good evening, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Commission. I'm John Kehoe, the Director of Planning and Development Services. So just a couple of items tonight. One, you may have watched City Council perform a successful hybrid City Council meeting earlier this week. So that leads to some questions about when will the Planning Commission be able to go back to some sort of in-person meeting. The Council did pass a resolution kind of identifying the criteria under which we can go back. So we don't really plan to go back in person until January at the earliest. And that would be as long as the positivity rate for COVID is 1.5 or less. So there's a caveat there. So we don't plan to go back the rest of this year. And then only under certain circumstances next year. We don't have any planning related items on the next City Council agenda, but I urge everyone to watch the next City Council meeting because they're going to have a study session on public safety issues. And I know that's been really important to the community. So everyone should tune in to watch that. So that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. Are there any questions for the director? There's no questions. We'll move on to item 8, items from commissioners. Show of hands. I do have a couple of things. Just a reminder to staff, page numbers are important. I dropped a pile of papers and they weren't numbered and that was difficult. I'd also like to request, especially in this day and age with the large projects, where we're getting these video presentations from a drone's eye view. While that's entertaining, it's not really enlightening as in terms of what the user experience will be for the project. So I would request that in addition to renderings at a 5-foot eye level view, that any walkthroughs, if you will, would also be a walk around the project at that eye level. To give everyone the experience of the project as they will actually experience it and see it. I think this would be helpful to us as commissioners and to the public as a whole. Are there any other items? Okay, then item 9, consent calendar, there is none. Item 10, public hearings, 10A. This is 1200 to 1204 North Orange Grove Avenue. It is a hearing to request a subdivided 5-unit residential building. This is purely administrative. Our staff planner is Lori Yelton. I imagine you need all of 60 seconds, Lori, to brief us on this. Would you let her rip?
Sure, I will make it 60 seconds. Let me share my screen. Okay, so good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before you tonight, let me see if I can get this up. Okay, there we go. Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. Before you tonight is a request for the subdivision of a 3-story, 5-unit multifamily residential building. The building was previously approved by staff as apartment units. The development was designed and built to meet the intent and requirements of the multifamily dwellings and all other sections of the city's zoning ordinance. The subdivision of this building will not be detrimental to the public welfare and will not impede implementation of the general plan, nor the purpose and intent of the provisions of the zoning ordinance. We would like to add condition 1.7 to the resolution, which was included in the original development permit conditions of approval, but we would like it to also be included in the resolution 21-1428 to read the bottom part of the screen, which says off-street parking shall be provided as shown on the approved plans. Because this project is located within a permit parking district, no annual residential and guest parking permits will be granted to the occupants, whether lessees, renters, or owners of the project. Each individual unit within the project may be granted up to 50 one-day visitor parking passes annually. This condition of approval shall be reflected within all lease rental agreements and CC&Rs for the project. So that, again, that would be added as condition 1.7 to the resolution, the subdivision resolution. Staff recommends approval of the subdivision as conditioned in the attached draft resolution PC 21-1428, and staff is available for any questions you may have regarding the subject application.
Wasn't timing you, but you were pretty close there, Lori.
Okay.
Are there any questions for staff? Point of information, that additional resolution was at my request, and I believe it's something that we should be including in all of these subdivision tracks as a way to clearly make sure that that item is included in the CC&R, so it's disclosed to any purchasers. If there are no questions, then I'd like to move approval of this item. Is there a second?
Chair, we have to first see if we have any.
We have a public hearing, sorry.
Public, yeah.
Tell me we have 6 speakers, David.
I could, but I won't. I
okay.
received no public comments on this item. If there's anybody on the phone call that would like to comment on 1200 North Orange Grove Avenue, please *9 for me. That'll let me know you'd like to speak on this item only. Chair, it does look like I have one calling from 6474. Go
okay.
ahead. State your hello. State your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Hi there. My name is Holly Mandel. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi. I live on the 1200 block of Orange Grove, and we've experienced many years of construction behind our place on Fairfax. And I guess my concern, which I don't know if this is the right time to address it, is just a parking situation. As far as the employees, the construction workers, where will they be parking during this? And I still am not clear, will the building have parking for residents in addition to them not getting permits? I just wasn't clear where the new residents are going to park. Do they have spots? Those were my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And Chair, it looks like there are no other speakers for this item.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for keeping me on the straight and narrow, David. To answer to the public, yes, there's on-site parking for the owners of these properties. And yes, as part of the resolutions for all new construction in the city of West Hollywood, construction workers are not allowed to park on city streets at any time. They will have use permits to deliver product, etc. But if you see a construction worker parking on our city streets, please call code compliance. It is a violation of the resolutions, their development permit. And but it's incumbent upon the citizens to contact code compliance to make sure that that is adequately enforced. If there's nothing else, I will repeat my motion for approval with the amended resolutions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jones. David, if there's no, are there any comments, questions? If there's none, David, please call the roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Vincent,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Dutta,
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones,
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Yes.
and the motion passes as amended, adding condition 1.7 unanimously.
Thank you, David. We will move on to item 10B, 9001 to 9017 Santa Monica Boulevard. This is a hearing to consider amending an existing development agreement on a project that is currently under construction. Mr. Castillo, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Let me share my screen here. Okay, here we go, all set. Good evening, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Commission. Antonio Castillo, Senior Planner with the Current and Historic Preservation Planning Division. The item before you this evening is a request to amend the development agreement for this project by extending the agreement by 24 months for the substantial completion of construction and operation of the restaurant and commercial spaces. The project is located at 9001 through 9017 Santa Monica Boulevard. It's located on the north side of Santa Monica Boulevard between Ramage Street to the east and Almont Drive to the west, approximately 1,000 linear feet from the boundary of the city with Beverly Hills. The 5-story mixed-use development project was originally approved in December of 2007 with a development agreement, and the DA was subsequently amended 4 times over the years. The site is currently under construction and anticipated to be completed in the first half of 2022. This project includes 2 levels of subterranean parking with commercial component located on the ground floor, including retail and restaurant space with associated dining patio. The residential component consists of 38 market rate residential units and 8 inclusionary residential units. Under the original development agreement, the DA would have concluded in December of 2012. However, due to project litigation, the recession, and administrative delays, the city has previously extended the project timelines under the DA with a term currently expiring on January 8th of 2022. Pursuant to section 6.9 of the DA, the owner is requesting a 2-year extension to the term and a concurrent 2-year extension to the expiration of the project approvals in order to complete the construction and commence the uses within the building. By allowing the extension, the development agreement would be amended as follows. 1, the term of the development agreement as set forth in section 6.1.1 to be further extended for an additional 24 months or up to and including January 8th of 2024 to allow the owner ample time to complete construction, initiate the intended uses of the project, record the final track map, and get the project open and running. Also, the expiration of the project approvals as set forth in section 2.6 of the development agreement includes the tentative track map, minor conditional use permit, administrative permit, and these are to be further extended to expire consistent with the term of the development agreement. Key factors outlined by the owner that delayed the progress of the project include delays in obtaining approvals. March 16, 2020, the declaration of local emergency. April 9, 2020, with city standards for conducting construction. In May of 2020, there was a 2-hour reduction in construction hours. And then the fact that there's been some difficulty in retail leasing, difficulties in obtaining building components, equipment and materials, and labor slowdowns. The owner is now in a unusual position in which the DA is coming to an end during the first phase of construction, during the final phase of construction. But for COVID-19 pandemic, the city's reduced work hours as well as other factors I just mentioned, the owner would have been in a position to complete the construction in advance of the development agreement ending. For this reason, the owner requests ample time to finish the project, market the project, lease the restaurant and commercial spaces, initiate the MCUP for the restaurant, complete the new housing units and deliver a completed and operational development. Staff is supportive of the request for a 2-year extension. The construction of the building is well underway and scheduled to be completed next year. As such, allowing the opportunity to see the project through construction and commence the uses is in the best interest of the city. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution before you in your packet, recommending approval of the extension to the City Council. And with that, this concludes my presentation, Chair. I'm available for any questions. Also within the audience here in the chat room, we have the project's representative, Mark Lehman, as well as Jamie Ross from GPI Companies, the company developing the project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Questions from commissioners of staff? Are there any? Show of hands. Mr. Lombardi, Commissioner Lombardi.
Thank you. I have just one question, and this is a question for staff, but maybe best addressed by the applicant as well. Simple one. It was maybe touched on a little bit in the staff report. If construction is going to be completed by next year, first half of next year, so within 6 months, why a 24-month extension on the construction phase?
Sure, I can answer that, Chair. The request, while that is correct, the applicant anticipates the construction being completed over the next 6 months, or at least the first half of 2022. The development agreement initially did not anticipate the restaurant not being completed. Initially, the development agreement was phased in phase 1 and phase 2. The first phase was for the full construction and operation of the restaurant, which included the MCUP for the ancillary sale of alcohol for the restaurant. I believe it was Amendment 3, the phasing of the project went away, and the entire project was going to be completed within one single phase. So where we find ourselves now is that the project approvals that include all the planning entitlements are tied to the development agreement. And if the development agreement, if the construction finishes, the development agreement term ends, but the restaurant has not been leased out and built out, then the MCUP would have expired or would expire. So what staff considered is, and what the applicant is requesting is to extend for 24 months. And Mr. Lehman can further elaborate on that. But one part is to allow the full construction, leasing, and have the restaurant in full operation, so the MCUP can be realized. The other part is the uncertainty of the current pandemic that we're in, and not knowing when we will be in the clear, so to speak. And so there's some leeway that the applicant has been requesting or has requested, and staff is supporting. I see Mr. Lehman here. If you'd like, Chair, perhaps Mr. Lehman can further elaborate.
Thank you. Let's finish with any other questions of staff before we move to the applicant's presentation. Commissioner Vinson.
Thank you, Chair. So I had the exact same question of Commissioner Lombardi. So what you're saying is that the development agreement, what's tied into that is the restaurant would be considered a separate TI. Is that what, from the core and shell of this building? And so once they finish their construction, they lease out the restaurant, and then that would be a TI that starts construction at that point. Am I correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Vinson.
Okay,
That's
that's
still a component of the development agreement in order to achieve their MCUP.
right, right. It just makes far more sense for the 24 months rather than, the 6 months needed. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions of staff? If not, then let's move to the applicant's presentation. Given the evening's agenda and the nature of this project, Mr. Lehman, if you could keep it to 5 minutes, it would be much appreciated.
Certainly, Mark Lehman here for the applicant. I want to thank Tony Castillo for his presentation and just let you all know that we fully support the staff report and Tony's recommendation and presentation tonight. Just to elaborate on the timeline for the extension, the reality is, as we all know, there's lots and lots of questions about COVID and how it's going to affect construction and the marketing of this project. And that's why we've asked for the 24 months. What's happened in the last 2 years because of COVID has been sort of unprecedented, that affected the construction and leasing of this and in all kinds of unexpected ways. There's unprecedented difficulties in getting materials, in labor shortages, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to go through all of that again unless you want us to, but that's really why we're asking for the 24 months. We need that time to finish the project. Hopefully COVID won't rear its ugly head again. If it does, there's a possibility construction might get shut down or slowed down even further. So that's why we want the 24 months, both finish construction, lease up the premises, and then allow the restaurant tenant the time to actually get the restaurant built and up and running. There's another sort of unique sort of, how do I say this, vagary in the way the original project approvals and development agreement were written, is that it doesn't specify a timeline like our new MCUPs do, that say you have to initiate your MCUP within 3 years and then give you several options to extend. That language did not exist. So that's why we're specifically also including that in the development agreement extension, so that it's clear that the applicant of the, the operator of the new restaurant would have the time to initiate that use and get a restaurant up and running. We're available. Jimmy Ross is here from the applicant as well to answer any questions. Otherwise, we support the staff report and the resolution before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. Are there any questions for the applicant? If there are none, do we have any, sorry, Mr. Lombardi, Commissioner Lombardi.
Thank you. Just wondering from the applicant, about how complete would you say the project is at this time, understanding that there's some TI components like the restaurant, if you kind of separate that out?
I think that you can see from the photos that Tony showed you, we're fairly far along, but we're anticipating construction will be completed sometime in the first half of next year. But remember, that's got to include both the internal build out as well as finishing the external. So I think that next year is really where we're hoping to finish this and to get the tenants up and running. But as we said before, we want the extra space just in case COVID continues to make things really, really difficult.
Okay, and one follow-up question that relates to that. Do you know approximately how long work may have ceased due to COVID or any other factors?
Well, it ceased at the beginning and then it just slowed down substantially. The slowdown was because of labor. As you know, we had a lot of uncertainty at first about whether construction could go forward. Then there were rules developed to allow construction to go forward. And the city in particular reduced hours of construction. They also prevented or prohibited Saturday construction, which is normally allowed inside. If you put that all together, that's probably almost a year's worth of delays right there. if not more. And those delays are ongoing because the restriction in hours is still in place right now. So we're still continuing to suffer those same delays and slowdowns.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Lombardi? Okay, Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to say, I run a Chamber of Commerce, and so I'm very sympathetic to the woes in construction over the past year. I know there have been a lot of issues regarding like materials and workforce and the constant changes in when workers can work. But I am really concerned about our residents in that area who have a reasonable expectation of a project being finished within a reasonable amount of time. And I'm just really worried about the impact of our residents in that area. So what I want to ask is, are you confident that this will be the last extension that you will need? And being sympathetic to the issues in construction right now and what is going on with COVID and how we cannot anticipate what might happen in the very near future, are you comfortable with 2 years, or do you feel that it may be more, you may actually need more time?
You know, our sincere belief and hope is that 2 years should be sufficient. I mean, and as far as impacts on the neighbors, the worst part of construction is way behind us. I don't know if any of you had seen this construction site, but you know, look, where the exterior of the building is getting close to completion. A lot of the heavy equipment stuff that was going on for a while is now finished. So the worst impacts, I believe, are behind us. But obviously we still have to finish this project. You know, look, it's hard for us to give any certainty because we are in an uncertain world. But we do believe that 24 months is more than enough, and that we should hopefully be underway way before that, unless something really bizarre happens again and we're forced to shut down.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if are there any other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Benson?
Thank you, Chair. What are your, prior to COVID, what were your job site hours? What hours was the construction commencing?
I guess I'll have to go back and look, and maybe Jamie Ross can tell you, but normally I think construction is allowed till 7 p.m. every day, and the city cut it back to 5 p.m. So there was a 2-hour loss of construction on those 5 days a week. That goes back to last May, I believe it was, of 2020. Plus Saturday construction is normally allowed from, I believe, interior of the building from like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. normally. And there was no construction interior allowed and none allowed even as of today. So that's a major cutback. I think the staff report gives you somewhat of an analysis on how many hours have been lost. It's hundreds and hundreds of hours that have been lost, if not more, in construction time.
What I'm getting at here is I work in construction. I manage projects like this in the field, maybe not as large, but quite significant. We rarely work over 8 hours. So there's a premium to pay if we work over 8 hours that the client has to pay. So unless you guys were working 10, 12-hour days, the reduction in daily hours wouldn't necessarily affect you. I definitely understand the Saturdays because we often have work that we can only do on Saturdays. So I understand that, but I was just trying to get at, were you doing 10, 12-hour days prior to COVID, or were you doing standard 8-hour work shifts?
I don't know, is Jamie Ross still on?
Yeah, I can answer that. Prior to this shutdown.
I'm sorry, please state your name and
oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm Jamie Ross. I work at GPI Companies. I'm with the owner of the property. It's a good question because prior to COVID, that's correct. We weren't working until 7. I don't know exactly what our time we were ending the day, but we had several trades that we had bought out with overtime hours. included double shifts, overtime being till 7 p.m., especially like on framing and many of the other trades that we wanted to get done more quickly. So yes, it definitely impacted our schedule in a significant way.
Okay, are there any other questions of the applicants? If not, are there any disclosures on this item? Seeing none, let's move to public comment. David?
Thank you, Chair. If anybody is on the platform that would like to speak on this item only regarding 9001 Santa Monica Boulevard, please hit *9 for me. That will let me know that I'd like to speak on this item, and you'll have 3 minutes to do so. And Chair, it looks like we are all clear for public comment on this item.
Okay, the applicant has 60 seconds to rebut the no comment.
I don't think we need to rebut at this point. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, very good. Deliberation. I'm gonna close the public hearing at this time. Do we have a motion on the floor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this project according to the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Caballero. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Lombardi. Okay, thank you. Dave, if there's no comments, questions, then David, could you please call the vote?
Thank you. Commissioner Carvalero?
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Odetta?
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones?
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously, approving resolution PC 21-1430. I do have an appeal process. Let me read that. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to incorporate the appeal from the last time that was approved, resolution number 1428, which I neglected to do at that time. So one moment, please. The resolution the Planning Commission's just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you, David. All right, then let's move on to item 11A. This is new business. This is 8850 to 8878 Sunset Boulevard. This is not a public hearing. We will not be voting this evening on this item. This is an opportunity for the commission to speak on the draft environmental impact report as well as the public. This is, again, not something that's going to be approved tonight. This is merely a public discussion of the draft impact report, which is, I believe there's about 10 more days. Doug, can you clarify to submit any further comments? So your opportunity tonight is to speak publicly, but you also have the opportunity to submit comments in writing, and you can see all of that in the draft impact report. So tonight we're going to be hearing from staff and I believe from DUDEC, who prepared the draft EIR, outlining what is in the draft EIR. And from there, we will begin our discussion of that item. Jennifer, who's Commissioner Lombardi?
Sorry, Chair, before we get started here, and I apologize, I got a little bit mixed up with the order, forgetting this was actually item number 11, not 10. So at this time, I think I'd like to actually recuse myself from this item. Just to provide a little background, my employer has a business relationship with one of the consultants on this project, although I'm not working on this particular project. So this is really out of an abundance of caution. Laura Langer and Isaac Rosen, city attorneys, are just researching conflict of interest rules. But at this time, it seems like it's better if I recuse myself, do not participate. Hopefully there will be some clarity though in the coming weeks, and I hope I will be able to participate when this comes forward again. So I guess I'll just listen in separately and be back later.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lombardi. And Ms. Langer, the rules for how you have to check out and check back in of the Zoom are what?
I think if the commission secretary can put Michael in the waiting room, and he can just come back in after this item. If I don't know if I see David here. David, are you able to do that for Michael?
Yes, I did. I just put him in the waiting room. So Michael, I'll call you back when we're ready for you.
Is that the planning commission version of a penalty box?
It's going out in the hallway, leaving the room.
It's my turn next, so okay. All right. Thank you. So Jennifer, who's on deck?
We got Doug Vu, Senior Planner. He will give the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Hoopen Garner and members of the commission. Let's see, let's get this started. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great, yes. For the record, my name is Doug Vu. I'm a planner with the department's current planning division. So the item before you is the draft environmental impact report that has been prepared for the proposed mixed-use development project at 8850 Sunset Boulevard. So under the California Environmental Quality Act, local agencies are required to evaluate and consider the environmental impacts of public and private projects during the decision-making process. So the EIR facilitates this, and the objectives of this document are to, number one, inform the public and decision makers about the project and potential environmental impacts. Number two, provide an opportunity for the public and local and state agencies to comment on the environmental issues. Number three, to identify feasible ways to avoid or reduce environmental impacts. Number four, consider alternatives that reduce or avoid impacts. And finally, number five, disclose significant and unavoidable impacts. So with the assistance from staff, the EIR was prepared by the city's environmental consultant, DUDEC, who are present this evening and will later on provide the commission with a summary of the project's environmental impacts. So this flow chart shows the chronological steps in the EIR process, which began over 2 years ago for this project. As you can see, we are currently at step 6 of the process, which is a public meeting to receive comments on the draft EIR. Therefore, any discussion by the commission at this time, as Chair Hoopen Garner stated earlier, should be limited only to the environmental impacts of the project and the thoroughness of the EIR, and not the merits of the proposal or an indication to support or oppose the project. In the weeks following the end of the review period on November 5th, staff will gather all the comments received and work with the consultant to respond to each correspondence received during this period in order to prepare the final EIR. After comments on the final EIR have been received, the Planning Commission will hold another public hearing to consider the entitlements for the project, receive public comment, deliberate, and then take an action to recommend that the City Council approve or deny the project and certify the final EIR. So if the commission does vote to recommend approval of the project, another public hearing will be held by the City Council to consider the project and receive further public comment before they take a final action to approve or deny the project. So the approximately 40,000 square foot project site is bound by Sunset Boulevard to the north, Larrabee Street to the east, the London Hotel to the south, and San Vicente Boulevard to the west. The site is currently developed with 4 1- and 2-story commercial buildings that total approximately 21,000 square feet and are currently occupied by the Viper Room nightclub, 2 liquor stores, 2 restaurants, a barber shop, a small professional office, and 2 retail stores. The site also contains surface parking lots totaling about 27,000 square feet that are located behind the buildings on the southern portion of the properties. So facing south in this aerial photo, land uses that surround the project include a combination of commercial and residential uses, including the London Hotel to the south. In the city's general plan, Sunset Boulevard is classified as an arterial street that serves regional and local vehicular traffic along commercial corridors. San Vicente Boulevard is a collector street that carries traffic to and from the residential neighborhoods, and Larrabee Street is a local street that serves the residential neighborhood. There we go. So the proposed project includes demolition of all existing improvements and the construction and operation of a new mixed-use hotel and residential development along the south side of Sunset Boulevard that would extend the full city block between Larrabee Street and San Vicente Boulevard. The development would contain approximately 240,000 square feet of floor area above grade, 180,000 square feet of underground floor area, and rise 15 stories with a height of 189 feet measured from Sunset Boulevard. The commercial portion of the development includes 115 hotel guest rooms and ancillary uses such as meeting rooms, a hotel spa and gym, a couple of outdoor pools, a few restaurants and lounges, as well as a new nightclub space for the Viper Room at the first basement level. The residential portion includes 31 market rate condominiums and 10 income restricted units with amenities that include a gym, a movie screening room, and an outdoor pool. The proposed project would also include an emergency rooftop helicopter landing facility for police and fire services, and 5 subterranean levels, 4 of which would primarily be used as a parking garage, providing 240 spaces and 3 loading spaces. All vehicular access into the proposed mixed-use development would be from San Vicente Boulevard, except for a driveway on Larrabee Street that would be used for commercial trucks to access the underground loading spaces. All egress from the site would be onto Larrabee Street. So this is a project rendering facing southeast. So the hotel is the volume in the foreground, and the residential units are the volume in the background. This is a rendering facing north. So in the foreground, you can see the London Hotel, and then in the background, the hotel tower is on the left and the residential tower is on the right. So these are a couple of existing proposed views looking southeast along Sunset Boulevard. So this is the existing view, and this would be the proposed view. And facing west along Sunset Boulevard, this is the existing view, and this would be the proposed view. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our environmental consultant, Eric Wilson. He will summarize the impacts of this project that have been identified in the draft EIR.
Thanks, Doug. Good evening, everyone, members of the commission. My name is Eric Wilson with DUDEC, the principal in charge for preparation of the EIR. I'm also joined tonight by Michelle Webb, the project manager for the EIR. I'm going to quickly walk through the topics that were evaluated in the EIR. As you know, Appendix G of the CEQA guidelines identifies 20 different environmental issue areas or factors to be considered when evaluating a project's potential effects. And for this project, 5 of those topics were scoped out in the initial study phase, and the remaining 15 categories shown on this slide here were carried forward for detailed analysis in the EIR. And each of these topics has an entire chapter of the document dedicated to that resource area. In each chapter, we discuss the environmental setting for that resource at the time of the publication of the NOP. We talk about relevant plans, policies, and ordinance related to that resource, the CEQA thresholds of significance and methodology used in the analysis, and then provide a detailed analysis of the environmental effects of the project, and if necessary, any mitigation measures. And as a result of that analysis, of those 15 topics that you see here on your screen tonight, 4 4 categories required mitigation measures. I'm going to quickly walk through those. The first being cultural resources, where mitigation measures were required to address unanticipated discovery of archaeological resources or human remains during construction. For geology and soils, 2 mitigation measures were provided. One addressing impacts related to strong seismic ground shaking from nearby faults, and another to address the potential discovery of paleontological resources during construction. In the hazards and hazardous materials chapter, mitigation measures were identified to address the potential for encountering contaminated soils during construction. And then finally, in the noise chapter, mitigation measures were provided to address short-term noise exceedance, exceedance of noise thresholds at the nearby adjacent London property to the south, and also to address long-term noise impacts from operation of outdoor amplification systems and mechanical equipment at the new hotel. And after implementation of all these mitigation measures, all of those impacts would be reduced to a less than significant level, with the exception of the short-term noise impacts at the London Hotel property, which would remain significant and unavoidable even after implementation of the mitigation. And that wraps up the summary environmental issues. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Eric. So that concludes staff's presentation, Chairperson Garner, and we are available to take questions from the commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. At this time, I'd like to start with the staff questions that I'd like us to focus on. I'll stay at the 10,000 foot level, in particular looking at the alternates and the general scope of the EIR. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to go to public comment, and then from there, we're going to take comments from commissioners. And I guess I'll start out because this is back to the construction of the EIR, and the basis of the EIR is to not only study the project in hand, but to look at alternatives that would be less impactful potentially. And I have a question for legal. This EIR states throughout that it complies with existing code, in particular in the land use section, but throughout those statements that it complies, it's actually saying that it complies if the SSP is amended. What is the correct procedure for this? And should the amendments actually be considered mitigations in as much as the existing SSP is not met?
Can you say the second part of the question again about mitigation? I'm not sure I'm following that piece of it.
If you go to section 3.8 in the land use section, throughout the discussion, it states that this would be in compliance if the SSP was amended. And it doesn't comply. As proposed, the project doesn't comply with the sunset specific plan. And so my question is that the statements made in the EIR state if the sunset specific plan is amended to make this compliant, then it will be compliant. But it's not compliant. So we're in a sort of a chicken and egg loop. But my question is, wouldn't that amendment be a mitigant to the fact that it is not compliant?
I understand what you're saying about it being a circular reasoning. I mean, I think the reason it's written the way it is because the project itself proposes changes to the specific plan. So the project is a revised specific plan. I think we can think about that. I mean, the purpose of tonight is to get comments and to hear questions about what's in the document. So I understand the question you're asking and the comment you're making. And the reason it's written the way it is because that's what the project is. But we can think a little bit more about the alternate way, which is how you're looking at it, and provide a response in the document.
So to me, does it comply? It's making a statement that it complies with the plan, but then it says, yeah, if the plan gets amended. And that statement to me is not in fact true because it doesn't comply with the sunset specific plan on a number of points throughout the land use section in particular. I haven't been thorough in my analysis, but I've got at least a half a dozen points where it says if amended. And so we're making it a fait accompli, and it doesn't in fact comply. So that's an important, I think, basis for the whole thing that I'd like to make sure is addressed.
Understood. Thank you.
Related to that, under the alternates, my question to staff is why an alternate that would comply with the sunset specific plan was rejected. And the language that was used in the rejection of that as a viable alternate was that it doesn't, and I quote, maximize infill development. And I'd like to know what the definition of maximize is.
So I think that you know the equivalent would be the highest and best use for the property.
So if the applicant proposed a 40-story building instead of a 15-story building, that would maximize the infill even more. So that would be an even better use.
So this is, Chair, if I could jump in. We're here to take comments. So if you want to make that comment, that's fine. We'll take it, we'll analyze it, we'll respond in the final EIR in writing. But those are the types of questions that we're not going to be answering this evening.
Okay.
Not because we don't have an answer, but because that we want to look at everything in the big picture. We want to look at all of the comments that we received during the whole comment period and make sure that we're responding to them thoughtfully.
Okay. And these are just general schema things. And the last schema thing that I would have is that one of the alternates that was reviewed is one where a higher construction noise wall was built as a mitigant. There was no change to the project at all. It was the exact same project. The proposed alternate was the exact same project with simply an additional mitigant in place. So my question again, this is sort of back to legal, how is that a viable alternative project when the resulting project would be exactly the same as the proposed project?
And I think to Jennifer's point, I think those are great comments to give in, and then everyone will analyze them and provide a written response when the final EIR is drafted.
All right. Well, then at this point, let's go to public comment. And David, I imagine you have a queue.
Thank you, Chair. I have several people on the platform with me. If there is anybody that would like to speak and make their comments on this item, please *9 for me at this time. That will let me know you'd like to speak specifically on this item. I did also receive a couple of speaker slips, and we'll take those first here. Okay, our first public speaker, Chair, are we giving 2 or 3 minutes?
Talk to me. What's our count?
I'm going to say 5 at the most right now.
And then 3 minutes each.
Thank you. Okay, our first public speaker will be Nick Schaefer. Nick, if you will unmute yourself by hitting *6, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. State your name and city of residence and any comments you have on this item.
Okay, ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Nick Schaefer, 48 years here at the English Village, resident. We're built in 1920s. We're a historical building. I know this has been my neighborhood. Number one, I'm going to just throw out a bunch of points. Global warming. Come on, West Hollywood. We are becoming so overdeveloped. Right now you have this lot with 10 small businesses, including the Viper Room, which isn't that big of a nightclub. You're now replacing it with this massive buildings and everything. Even though we keep hearing there'll be no impact on our environment, there is going to be so much more traffic, more delivery trucks. And I'm telling you, traffic will be backing up. We have the Arts Club coming in. Why don't we finish that before we even get to all this? But cars coming west and they want to enter on San Vicente, they're going to have to pass through traffic that's heading up through Sunset. It's going to back up traffic. Larrabee, and the same thing's going to happen. Second point, we already have a major hotel, the London West, directly across the street from us. That took away housing, and with it they're all the functions that they have and the weddings. So we're so impacted by the London West. And don't forget, all employees enter on Larrabee. When they have the function, everybody exits on Larrabee. And now you're going to have this project with all the exits on Larrabee and the delivery trucks. Street parking. Street parking is almost impossible. These cottages built in the 1920s, they depend 100% on street parking. Street parking will become impossible. It is already difficult. Even with the London West, within the business, you have the beauty salon, which all these women with their handicap placards, if they see parking, they take it. Parking will be almost extinct. We just lost 4 spaces to put in the stop sign at Harrod and Larrabee. I want to know, will the residents there, will they get 5-hour passes? Because what will happen if they're only getting 2 spaces and then a group says, hey, let's all go to the Viper Room, come on over, where will their guests park? If they have 5-hour, they'll just call in and they'll take up all the street parking. Uber and Lyft, we're competing with them. Employees, we're competing with them on Sunset. You may say it's permit parking, but the reality is with people with the disability placards and whatever, it goes fast. How many employees do you expect are going to be on this site? Parking needs to be free to all employees. I know you can't answer these questions now, but exactly between the restaurant, the hotel, the Viper Room, how many residents will be there? If you don't offer free parking to them, they will then come on the streets. As far as I'm concerned, the hotel needs to be scrapped. We already have a major hotel. No delivery trucks on Larrabee. Larrabee's a very narrow street. Almost every space of parking is taken up. Almost every resident who have been here, their cars have been hit. Cars are going to be sideswiped by these things. So anyway, these are just some of the thoughts. And I say, wait to see about the art clubs. We'll go any further. And please, West Hollywood, be a leader on global warming. We're too overdeveloped. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Our next speaker will be from the telephone ending in 1764. Go ahead and unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. State your name and city of residence, please. Hi, go ahead.
Hi. Hello?
Yes.
I'm using my home phone and I didn't realize it. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Terrific. Thank you very much. My name is Susan Milrod. I live on Larrabee Street. Thank you, commissioners and city employees who are great. And thank you, Commissioner, for suggesting that visuals have a straight-eye perspective for walk-around, because you don't get a sense of how huge and overwhelming this project is unless you're standing on the corner looking at where it's going to be. I have been visiting to the east and to the west on Sunset. To the east, the new buildings that are Sunset approved, they provide vistas and free outside seating if you want to go have a cup of coffee and just sit there. To the west, the addition is so discreet that I didn't even realize it was there. None of that is true with this building. I feel claustrophobic thinking of it. I live on Larrabee. You cannot, and it was discussed in the transportation meeting, you just can't have that many more trucks coming in. 240 parking spaces is not enough. I'm surprised the water doesn't discuss how there are streams under this street. We had to put in a new elevator. It was such a mess because there are streams in this part of town that are underground that I have to assume are also there because we're a few hundred feet away. And even though this may not count as being pertinent tonight, the most upsetting thing to me is these designers, their attitude towards the public. There is no open access to any greenery or sitting area for the people who live here. The 10 apartments are all being built, and it's legal, on one floor. It is the third floor. It is the lowest floor. It is most negatively impacted by any negative emissions and ecological problems. It is the third floor on the corner where trucks will be. There will be mortar breaks, all of this. We don't know if these people are giving affordable parking, if they're allowed to use the amenities. I mean, it is segregation and separation in a way. West Hollywood, we pride ourselves on being an inclusive city. It's not inclusive for somebody building this sort of monstrosity that will put a physical shadow over everything to the south of it, to put the for rent apartments on the lowest floor like that. It's making a very specific point. We have never been shown an alternative of any sort. Thank you. I'm sorry to speak too much. I will send my thoughts in. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Ms. Milrod. Our next caller, it will be from the telephone number ending in 5052. Go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name and city of residence, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, my name is Richard Lewis.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
I live at 1120 North Clark Street. I've been a resident of West Hollywood since 1973. And this project is architecturally pleasing, where most of the projects we've had look like Stalinist architecture with landscaping. So if there's going to be construction here and a building here, I wholly hope it looks like this.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Lewis. I have one speaker left. If there is anybody on the platform that would like to speak on this item, please hit *9 for me. Our next speaker and last speaker is the telephone ending in 6941. Go ahead and unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and state your name and city of residence, please. Okay, we'll come back to that caller from the telephone number ending in 9388. You can go ahead and mute yourself, *6, and state your name and city of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Hello, my name's Roxanne. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Roxanne.
Hi, I grew up on North Clark Street and I relocated to my with my family on the same street, directly across the street. And I think the very reason why I was compelled to move back here is probably to speak in opposition of this project, which is called AKA the Monster. Sunset Strip is not Las Vegas. It is a collection of historical musical clubs and various mom and pops. It was disheartening to find out that even a pandemic couldn't stop this project. According to the WehoVille article in September 21st, the developer wanted to try to push the project through and has contracted 3 former WeHo City Council campaign managers. It is owned by the Essig family, this development is, and who has contributed to 2 City Council member campaigns. Excuse me. So this project probably wouldn't even be on the table if it wasn't some manipulation of our political system. It's nauseating to see that a project which is $500 million plus is even being considered to be a project that is a hotel, mixed use, with a housing shortage, let alone the global impact it'll have. The air conditionings, these single air conditionings, the traffic. So this is disheartening that a project like this is even on the table. I want to thank you for listening and have a good evening, everyone.
And thank you for your comments, Roxanne. And our last public speaker, I want to make sure we're getting everybody that's on the platform. If you want to speak, please *9 for me at this time. Our last public speaker will be the telephone number ending 6941. Go ahead and *6 for me to unmute yourself. State your name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to make your comments. And Chair, it looks like they are not available, and that looks like our last public speaker.
Very good. Thank you, David. If you could, yeah, thank you. Perfect.
Hello?
Oh, do we have our last public speaker?
Yeah, I finally got in. I guess you can hear me.
Okay, yes. Please state your name and city of residence. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Robert Brigandy, and I'm a resident of West Hollywood. I live on Larrabee Street. And, I take the position that I think this is an amazing project. West Hollywood is a progressive city. This building is nothing more than showing progressive. You know what, traffic? The greatest city in the world is New York City. You know what? Amazon took over. How many of you use Amazon? How many mom and pops went out of business? Okay, so this is not so much for maybe not an older generation, but it's for the up and coming. Okay, this is something new. It's something exciting. The traffic, I live on Larrabee, and maybe additional traffic could slow these cars down from zooming up and down Larrabee, zooming up and down San Vicente along Sunset. Maybe it could be a positive thing for us. So I am totally in support of the project. I believe it's encompassing, and it's considering not just today, but the future of this city.
Okay, thank you. David, are there? One more time.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's all we have, Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, then at this time, I'd like to field commissioner comments. I mean, we have two approaches to this. One is sort of go section by section, or just have everybody say all their comments all at once. Any thoughts?
I vote for the latter, Chair.
Okay. Then do you want to go first?
That's what I get. Well, before I do anything, though, I just want to acknowledge like the neighbors and the neighborhood associations who have been actively engaged and sending in their thoughts. I've read everything, and I just wanted to just extend my appreciation to everyone who sent in comments. Okay, so one of the unavoidable impacts is construction period noise and its impact on the London because it's so proximate. So there's a suggestion to erect a 24-foot soundproof wall, but it will not do much for the rooms at the top of the London, if I'm understanding the report correctly. My concern is that we're in this post-COVID era, or we're getting into this post-COVID era, and it's going to take years for our hotels to recoup from being closed. And I just am really concerned about the impact on the London. This construction is going to go on for years, and who's going to want to stay at a hotel where there's all this construction noise for years? So, okay. So I just wanted to make a comment about that. And as one resident pointed out,
No,
staff, I don't know if you can mute the unmuted. So one resident pointed out that there is not a noise mitigation plan for the sound that carries to the north. So that's one thing. I have concerns about the number of parking spaces. There are 240 parking spaces, which seems woefully insufficient for a project that has 115 hotel guest rooms, 41 units, a nightclub, a restaurant, and quote, the largest conference/event space on the Sunset Strip. I just don't know where all these cars are going. We haven't even accounted for employees. So that is definitely a concern. I'm also concerned about the way these cars are going to be entering. We're going to have two hotels right next door to each other. They're both going to have events taking place in those hotels, from weddings to galas. And I just have a lot of concerns about queuing. I just feel like there are going to be cars all the way down San Vicente, and I think it's unrealistic to think that all of these folks are going to be taking rideshare. I think there are going to be limos and all sorts of things up and down San Vicente. So, and then, also on Larrabee, because that's how they're going to get out. So I have concerns about that. I'm confused about this park. There on page 291, it says that the project revitalizes the strip through a variety of things, including accessible outdoor green spaces. It makes mention of the green roof garden that itself is not accessible. And the green space, the terrace, is 3 to 4 stories above Sunset Boulevard, and it's referred to as a park. And I just challenge that. I think that when people think about a park, they think about public domain and accessibility. And I don't think that something being 3 to 4 stories up is publicly accessible. I think that it really comes across as more as a private amenity than it does something that's for the public. So I'm just confused about it. I know that we're not answering questions right now, but is it a park or is it, I don't know. I'm just confused about what that is. It just seems like it contradicts itself in the report. Other than that, I think that was most everything that I had, Chair, but I reserved the right to come back because I wasn't prepared to go first.
Because
I think that's I think that was for the most part. So that covers, I guess, traffic, parking, noise, and one other line item. So.
Okay, thank you. Who'd like to go next? Commissioner Dutta.
Thank you, Chair, and bear with me. I just have a lot of notes kind of scattered here, so I'm going to kind of go through them and make any comments that I have. First and foremost, I definitely concur with Commissioner Thomas's comments on the impact to the London, especially the upper floors, given that the sound barriers are not going to mitigate enough of the or against the sounds that are going to impact those 2 floors, and what impacts that would have on the hotel, on the London's business. And so I understand that the 24-foot sound barrier, that height is specifically because of potential, there are constraints to structurally how high that sound barrier can be, but certainly the impact of the London will be felt, and I think that's one of the big concerns that I had here. Another thing, going through both the draft DIR document as well as the transportation study, there's obviously mention of ingress on San Vicente and egress on Larrabee, minus the loading zone ingress on Larrabee, but it doesn't necessarily go into detail about is that ingress going to be both northbound and southbound on San Vicente, and is egress going to also be northbound and southbound on Larrabee? Are there going to be restrictions there? I know currently with San Vicente, for example, when you turn off of Sunset, there are those little, I don't even know what you call them, posts that are in the middle of the road that restrict you from turning left immediately once you turn onto San Vicente going south. And so what impact does, the northbound versus southbound have on accessing the site and overall traffic patterns? Because I can imagine to access going northbound, someone entering that site would have to kind of do a big old loop around to get into there. So, and then same thing on Larrabee, what are the impacts if you're only able to turn left coming out of the site onto Larrabee? From experience, that light can often get backed up, especially during kind of commute hours where through traffic on Sunset is given a lot of, a longer period of time. So you might be waiting there for several minutes before you're able to turn from Larrabee onto Sunset in either direction. So that was one thing I didn't necessarily notice detailed anywhere. So if that can be addressed. Another thing, various mentions on views and view sheds, and specifically mentioning that effects on private views are not protected under the city land use policy or CEQA, but public views are. So if there's any explanation specifically of what constitutes a public view, I wanted to see if there was any explanation there that could be given. And then my last comment was, this is on page number 394, I believe, 393. The city considers projects proposed within half mile of an existing major transit stop or an existing stop along the high quality transit corridor to have less than a significant impact on VMT if it unless it falls within one of 5 categories. And there was one that's specific to a project, which is, sorry, letter E, a project with the potential for significant regional draw. And it describes regional draw from the perspective of the employment and the employment base, but I guess I'm confused as to how this project wouldn't be considered a regional draw, especially considering if the Viper Room is re-envisioned at the property, why would that not be considered a regional draw? So I believe those are all my comments for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Dutta. Next, Commissioner Caballero.
Thank you, Chair Hoopen-Gardner. Commissioner Thomas, you did a great job sort of summarizing some of my notes, and I too have all the same traffic conditions or worries that Commissioner Dutta and Commissioner Thomas has. I mean, we understand that the entrance on San Vicente is literally, I think, within 30 feet of that intersection, and the impact of that as cars queue, unless there is a very long queue aisle into the building that will quickly scoop those cars off of San Vicente. I think the environmental impact report didn't really do a good job of addressing that. They basically, for me, it's just the reality versus plugging the number into a computer and it's saying it's okay. I'm kind of taking the reality kind of point of view, given my experience in the area. And then the concern of having those cars all, dump onto Larrabee. And, I've looked at other similar conditions like our project on the corner of La Cienega and Sunset, which has the exact same conditions. You enter off of La Cienega and you exit off the other end. And there are times when there are backups there. It actually is fewer than I thought, been on a street like San Vicente, which is so highly trafficked. And on La Cienega, when you're sort of dropping down, no one can cross. So I'm just a little concerned whether it actually works in this condition like it works on La Cienega and Sunset. So I would just like to see a little bit more clarity on that. Height. I have a question, and maybe Doug Vu can answer it. I wish I had asked it earlier, but in regards to the affordable housing, they're providing 41 condos. And 10 are affordable. How does it work in this situation? Because that reflects on policy LV 2.5, which allows additional height and density if you provide affordable housing. So answering one kind of triggers my next comment. So how does that work with condos?
So, so for this particular project, the 31 market rate condos will be, on the upper levels above the second floor, and the 10 income restricted units would be on the first floor. And so those 10 income restricted units will all be one bedroom units that are, I believe, at least 650 square feet in size. And so our municipal code allows projects to provide or allocate affordable housing in that sort of layout, as opposed to 20% of units that are of similar size and type as the market rate units.
So they're not for sale. They are rentals, or they are for sale, just so it'll reduce costs.
At this point, we do not know yet. But we've reviewed this as those income restricted units would be rental units.
And I mean, I was taken by one of the public comments. It's like having these units on the lower floor. Why is it that they're allowed to do that on this project, where most projects, they need to disperse it evenly throughout the complex?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the municipal code allows the commission to grant that that request to place all of the units on one level if it provides specific or certain benefits over distributing throughout the building. So
okay, so we could, as a commission, make a recommendation to disperse the affordable units throughout the building, as opposed to allowing the developer to place them all on the lower floors.
That could be something that you could deliberate about.
Okay, I mean, I would like to propose that idea because just from an equity point of view, just makes sense to me. So that would be my one comment. And then again, LV 2.5, which allows height, it's like in regards to height, it's a tricky one because we have the arts club kind of going in the ground. And I remember when we reviewed that project, I was surprised that the community was very much in favor of having that 10-story wall kind of looming over their residence, and we got very little opposition. So in regards to height, personally, I feel like this building looming over the London and looming over the residential area will have impact. But I guess I'll go back to how the community feels about it. The letters that have been written don't necessarily address that, but they are uncomfortable with the scale of this development on that site. So yeah, that's one concern. And then the other thing, kind of, they continually call themselves or refer to themselves as a landmark. And as Commissioner Dutta, it's like it's a draw. And given it goes back to the traffic thing, if we have 33 trips a day, 3,000 additional trips a day, and then the draw of the Viper Room, or the draw of having an potentially an architectural landmark on this corner, what does that do to the intersection of San Vicente and Sunset, and the intersection of Sunset and Larrabee? And how do we resolve that?
Yeah, so those are questions that that we will respond to in the final EIR.
Great, thank you. Yeah, those are my comments for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caballero. Who's next? Commissioner Vinson?
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my comments brief because I think Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Dutta, were right up the alley of all the questions or comments that I had, and then Caballero then elaborated on those. I do think that I would want to look back at the regional draw and how this doesn't qualify as a regional draw as well. Also the noise study for neighbors to the north during construction and then during operational operations of the hotel and condos. And then again, my concern was also the traffic on Larrabee and on San Vicente. I would think that since this project is so close to that intersection, that if you were turning from Sunset right onto San Vicente, so you'd be heading south on San Vicente, that you probably wouldn't be able to make a left into that building, since I can imagine how backed up that intersection would be and you're so close. So I worry about, you know, the queuing of cars, as Carvalero mentioned, heading, you know, taking a right into the driveway and backing up there on San Vicente, and then the same. I would worry that exiting the building on Larrabee, that you would most likely be able to turn right only, just because the backup would be significant at that intersection as well. And then how that would affect traffic on Larrabee if everyone has to make a right exiting. Those are my comments, since everyone pretty much touched on everything that I was going to mention. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Vinson. Vice Chair Jones?
Thank you. I don't have a ton to add. I think the community and especially my fellow commissioners have done a really good job of synthesizing a lot of the notes that I had. I want to be mindful of, you know, the comments that we're here to receive and to give, I think. But one of the things that, you know, that has really struck me by, you know, about this report, and again, I'm not sure where this fits in, but is really about kind of the other part of we talk about traffic and we talk about, you know, queuing. All of these things are concerns of mine as well. But I think also, you know, we've really been talking as a city and as a community about, you know, there being lots of foot traffic and there really being a great pedestrian experience. And I am not sure that I see that reflected here. That's something that is, you know, is of concern to me. Let's see what else. I have some other notes here. You know, to Commissioner Hoopengarner's comments about the sunset specific plan, which I recognize is, you know, something that needs to be updated and has been a bit disjointed over time. But it just seems that in many ways, this is kind of going against so many things that we've been working toward in the city in a number of ways, whether it's, you know, environmental impact, traffic, et cetera. So I think those are some of my comments at this time. Thanks very much for moderating, Chair Hoopengarner.
Thank you. Well, yes, I have a few comments, many of which have been already addressed, but one in particular relating to the ingress and egress that wasn't addressed as near as I could see in all 10,000 pages of the various documents, was the issue of this venue has a 500-seat event space, which Mr. Vu will later get into conversations about parking calculations and how that works with our 240 parking spaces. But that has a 500-person event space. The London has a 400-person event space. Imagine a Valentine's evening with 2 full events going on. That's 900 people. Even if you cut the car traffic in half, that's 450 cars in the space of, you know, half hour, 45 minutes to enter. What is the impact at the corner of Cynthia in front of Station 7? The fire department letter in the public access section did not address that topic. And what are the potentials for that intersection to be impacted in a way that prevents fire from being able to get in and out of their station? It's bad enough now. I can only imagine what the potential impacts are from this. And VMT, I don't care. This is a public safety issue that I don't see addressed in the EIR. So I touched briefly on the alternates. I think it's very concerning to me that the alternate that would be consistent to Commissioner Jones's, Vice Chair Jones's point about, you know, the SSP, that alternative was specifically designed to not have affordable housing and then criticized for not having affordable housing. It was specifically designed to not have key features in this project and then criticized and not selected because it didn't have key features in this project. It was specifically designed to be a square box and not be an exemplary building, and therefore discarded as an alternate. And I think personally, honestly, I feel that's disingenuous. That a project couldn't have been designed that complied with the SSP as an alternate and properly studied. This was discarded because it didn't maximize infill development, which again, please define maximize and what is that? I think I already brought up about the construction noise mitigation as an alternate. And as a couple of you pointed out, there's a word for the third floor, and it's called a poor floor. And we went through this on 8899 Beverly, and to some of my colleagues' points, this is antithetical to who we are and how we choose to operate and how our code operates. And just to make this convenient for someone so that they can keep all their $4 million units on the higher floors, I don't feel is appropriate for our community. And to not address that and study that in the land use section, I feel is extremely egregious omission. So skipping down through the bits, geology. On appendix page 833, it talks about no oil fields, no oil, et cetera, et cetera. Did anyone look at the existing deeds on these properties? My deed, which is 1,600 feet away from this property, has a carve out for Standard Oil. Are there carve outs for oil field rights on these existing deeds? Dewatering, groundwater. What are the water levels, the levels where the addition hit water and how much dewatering was required? And the same about the Millennium. At what point did they hit water and how much dewatering was required? And what is the environmental impact of that dewatering? Earthquakes. I didn't see anything discussed about the torsion of that bridge connector between those two buildings. When we get one of our lovely twisty earthquakes, how is that not going to snap? And what is the required correction to address that? And I did not see that studied at all in the EIR. Tiebacks. If the London won't allow tiebacks under their property, what happens? What are the mitigations? Again, back to the earthquake and the wave action on the two rooftop pools. You've got two bodies of water sitting 15 stories up in the air. What is the impact of the waves on those pools in an earthquake? There's a statement on page 3,952 of the hydrology section that states the proposed project would not increase the imperviousness of the project site. Therefore, the project would not deplete groundwater supplies or interfere substantially with groundwater recharge. It's stating that because there's an existing building on top, it does that there's no perk. Therefore, this building is not going to impact groundwater, but it's going down 74 feet. This statement makes no sense to me. I think it needs to be seriously addressed. Imperviousness is not the same as no impacts and no depletion on groundwater. Land use 3.8. If this is a landmark design, and while I see that there are many design features to potentially commend this as a landmark, the problem is that the primary design feature is not visible to anyone other than our neighbors up on Clark Street and a couple of people at the London. That primary feature is only visible to someone traveling east or west on Sunset if they stop in front of the building and look up 4 or 5 stories. The key elements of this design that make it a landmark aren't visible to virtually anyone. Does that take away its landmarkedness? I think Commissioner Thomas brought it up in 3.8-15 that the landscaped roof is accessible to the public. Yeah, no. 3.8-16, landscaping for the project will consist of water-saving native plantings. This is patently false. The vast majority of the plants in this plant palette are not native. And there are many that aren't. You'll have to look at the wool calls numbers, but no. 3.8-16, green roofs at the rooftop. There are none. There's a nominal amount. This is, again, not a true statement. 3.8-18, the proposed project would require an SSP amendment, but this is consistent with the plan. Again, if we amend it, it's consistent, but it's not consistent. I just think that tautology is got a real problem with it. 22 presents a powerful image to visitors. Again, only if I own a drone, and I don't own a drone, and I don't plan on owning a drone. The drone is the only one who's going to see that key feature. Site 6E is zoned to 100 feet. This is 200 feet. How is that consistent, as in quotes, that it states in the project, in the EIR, calls it consistent? 3.8-29, this item isn't rated at all. It's about the connector from the London that's been excluded. And that's part of the Sunset specific plan. And the DIR doesn't even rate this. Then moves on to page 30, or 30 of 3.8, excuse me, 29, 30. The whole discussion on the conference room is also not rated. And again, states it requires an amendment to comply. The fact that a target site that has a significant public amenity in order to get the additional FAR, I'm trying to understand what is being defined as that significant public amenity. Is it the open space? Because there is no public open space. Or is it the landmark status? What is the significant public amenity that is being identified? We've talked about the height, and in particular in the Sunset specific plan on page 76, all private properties serving the general public as open space shall be accessible from grade level. I believe Commissioner Caballero, we spoke about this and you had some suggestions during design review because this wasn't accessible. It goes on to say, in the case of a sloping site, the primary access should be at grade level and other entrances can be accessed above and below grade where appropriate. This project does not comply with that. This is not a public open space. Noise, one of the items that wasn't addressed was the heliport. and whether or not that's purely for emergency uses and we can specifically ban ancillary uses of the heliport and the impacts that that might have on noise in the neighborhood. I can see these very, very expensive multi-million-dollar condos resulting in helicopter traffic back and forth. I believe we had that issue at La Maison at one point. So I think that that should be studied and or specifically addressed. As my colleagues pointed out on the sound barrier, I can't imagine the impacts on the London. You're asking people to pay a premium dollar for a 4 or 5 star rated room. You're going to go out to the clubs. That's why you're staying at the London. And promptly at 8 a.m., you're raised straight out of bed by pile driving and construction noise. I can't imagine what that would do to the revenue stream at the London. And I mean, I've had it happen to me at a very expensive hotel and I raised holy hell. It needs to be addressed in a significant way. We talked about the fire department. And I just want to put a real star on this regional draw business, okay? This is, and I quote from their own website, the largest conference/event space on the Sunset Strip. How is that not a destination? How is that not a regional draw? And how should we not have to study the impacts of that regional draw? And yeah. That's my short list. Commissioner Caballero.
Yeah, Chair Hoopengarter, thanks for bringing up design review because I think it's worth noting. There are some good things about this project. And it was interesting when Doug Vu did the existing view versus proposed view. The proposed views are more enticing than what's there. And then going back to sort of the pedestrian experience, and I don't know if you recall, we spent quite a bit of time in the design review discussing the pedestrian experience. And even though it may not be perfect and it might come back perfect, it definitely does, it does a good job of making the pedestrian experience at San Vicente and Sunset and along Sunset Boulevard a much better experience. You know, the sidewalk is wider, you see through the building, you know, that I think they did a good job. They didn't, you know, they mention it in the EIR, but I think it's worth noting a couple of good points, you know, here. And then going back to the park, which Commissioner Thomas mentioned, and you've mentioned, and everybody sort of kind of hinted around it. It's like in design review, it was never presented as a public space. And in the report, it's implied that it is. So in the next presentation, can we have definitive clarity on that? Because it does impact how this a public amenity for the neighborhood, which I think is commendable if that's the intent. But I definitely didn't get that when we were in design review.
And I agree because I hadn't looked at the Sunset specific plan prior to design review. Going forward, I'm going to be doing that more often so that we could address that up front. And had I seen that paragraph at the time of design review, I'm sure we would have had that conversation.
Yeah.
But I did in the construct of this, look at the Sunset specific plan and look at the compliance. And that's when it came to the fore. And I was like, wait a minute, because it was being asserted in the EIR that it's public use space. Yeah. And I'm like, but what? That wasn't what we talked about at design review and was never part of any of the materials. And yet it is part of the specific plan.
Yep.
So I think that disconnect absolutely needs to be addressed. And I agree. We said it at design review. I think there's much to commend this design. Do I think it's huge and going to be very impactful? Yes. Do I think that this design could and should be in a different location where it could be better appreciated? Yes. I don't feel that this location for that particular design is optimal. But that's not this conversation.
We don't want to deliberate on the project tonight.
Exactly. So I think if there's nothing else, I think we gave you some homework.
Yes, we thank you for your comments. They're really helpful.
And I guess my closing comment would be simply, there's a lot of statements throughout this that are categorical and frankly false. And I think that's really problematic for me. That I really find, and it makes me beg the question, what did I miss that is also a problem? Because while I was fairly thorough in going through all 10,000 pages, I certainly didn't read every word. And, you know, what else is incorrect? So that's the reason for this public comment process. And I encourage everyone to, you know, supplement their comments via letters, which I'm sure somewhere in the front of this is where to send them. Doug, can they send them to you?
Yes, please send them to me.
Okay, so that's dvu@weho.org.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments? Ms. Langer, did you pop up for a reason? No. Not that we
But
don't
thank you
love
for
seeing your
checking.
smiling face. I just wondered if there was a reason you were here. Okay. With that, I am going to suggest that we take a brief intermission. It's 8:30, let's call it 8:40, at which point the next item of business will be 8615 West Knoll, which is item 10C. And I will be recusing myself from this hearing as I live within 500 feet. And so I will be turning over the gavel to Vice Chair Jones. Take it away.
Great, thank you. So yes, I would also recommend that we take a break. I need to walk my dog. How does like 7 minutes sound? I just want to make sure that it's a time that's agreeable to everyone. I'm getting looks from the animal, but I'm flexible.
8:30, that's 8:40. That gives you 13 minutes for your animal. How about that?
That sounds great. Thank you, everyone. We will reconvene here at 8:40, which is in approximately 13 minutes. I will see you then.
See you guys in 2 weeks.
So it's 8:40. Is everyone back? There he is, my neighbor, Rogerio. I mean, technically we're all neighbors, but Rogerio is actually literally my neighbor. Why can I not hear anything? Is anyone else talking or is it just me?
We can hear you, Vice Chair.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm assuming it's like the head nodding and, recognition, all right. Okay, if everyone is back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, great. I think we can go ahead and reconvene. We are coming back from a quick break. Thank you again for humoring me. I hope it was enjoyable for you. So let's move on to item 10C. This is a public hearing for 8615 West Knoll Drive. This is a request to demolish an existing single-family dwelling and construct a 5-story, 10-unit multifamily building with semi-subterranean parking for the property at 8615 West Knoll Drive. And with that, I will hand this item over to Roger Rath, I believe is our staff liaison on this project.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Roger Rath, and I am one of the assistant planners with the city's current planning division. I'm going to share my screen now to start the presentation. All right, so the item before you is a request to demolish a single-family dwelling and detached garage to construct an approximately 11,165 square foot, 5-story, 10-unit residential building with 1 level of semi-subterranean parking garage. The project is using a state density bonus and reserving one of the units for affordable housing. The 9,440 square foot project site is in the R3C zoning district. Other properties in the immediate vicinity includes multifamily buildings that range from 2 to 4 stories in height and single-family buildings within the same zoning district across West Knoll Drive. The proposed 10-unit residential building contains 1 level of semi-subterranean parking consisting of 12 single-stall parking spaces. The project contains 3 one-bedroom units and 7 two-bedroom units with 1 very low inclusionary unit. The rooftop patio is accessible as common open space for all residents. Per the affordable housing requirements and incentives section of the code, if a residential development project includes the required percentage of low or very low income housing and is located within 1/2 of a mile from a major transit stop, then upon a request of the developer, a parking ratio of 0.5 spaces per bedroom shall apply. The applicant is required to build 1 affordable housing unit on site per the city inclusionary housing ordinance and is located less than 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. The developer has made a request for this parking incentive, and as a result, the required parking for the total for the parking of a total 17 bedrooms is 9 parking spaces. The applicant exceeds the minimum requirement by providing 12 parking spaces. By providing the 1 inclusionary unit, the project qualifies for a 42.5% density bonus allowed by the state density bonus law. A 42.5% density bonus translates to a bonus of up to 4 units. However, the applicant requests only 2 units for a total of 10 to be provided in this project. Because the applicant is providing a very low income unit, the project is allowed 2 affordable housing concessions, and the applicant has elected to use only 1 concession, to include an additional story to the total project height as indicated in the red dashed box. Therefore, the maximum allowable height is 55 feet and 5 stories. On page 7 of the staff report, under your table, there's a footnote that references the height measurement section of the code. There's a typographical error I wanted to mention in the code section that it references. The correct code section should be 19.20.080.B.2C. The section of the code, however, is correctly referenced in the height section of the staff report. So to present the design component, City Architect Rick Abramson will discuss the project design analysis. I'll turn the mic to Rick now. Rick, are you ready to present your portion?
Yes, thank you, Roger. Good evening, Vice Chair, Interim Chair, and Commissioners. So as Roger mentioned, this project on West Knoll actually was a previously approved project that proved to be infeasible from a construction standpoint. Those of you on the commission remember this when it came before you on February in 2019. It was an all concrete building that required quite a bit of retaining and earthwork. So this is actually a slightly scaled down version. It's, in my opinion, much more neighborhood sensitive. And working closely with the applicant, I think there were substantive parking upgrades, improvements to the unit plans, and importantly, a heightened responsiveness to the environment, which is something we've been emphasizing lately. The design itself incorporates simple lines and geometric proportions that seek to harmonize with nature while still maintaining its own architectural identity. It actually takes cues from some of the mid-20th century Italian rationalist architecture that I think, given the context of this neighborhood and some of the modernist language adjacent, I think is not only complementary, but actually scales and details this kind of language in a very thoughtful and successful way. There's one level of semi-subterranean parking, which is accessed off West Knoll, and the proposed design is more efficient, much more buildable, and I think user-friendly. The rooftop does contain some common space. The applicant has done a really good job of lessening the size of the rooftop terrace, so it won't be able to be used for large assembly, but is more for intimate communal space. There's plantings around the edges as well as solar panels that are used to keep all the activity more towards the center of the roof. And importantly, they're also using solar panels to screen the mechanical units, which is something we've really been trying to emphasize with applicants, that they can do a great help with energy conservation by keeping mechanical units out of direct sunlight. And so we're excited to see that has been integrated. One aspect that I think is less successful would be on the west side, where there are balconies, outdoor balconies facing west that are 5 feet deep. In general, 5 feet is not a great dimension for furnishing and for conversation. It does meet code in terms of minimum requirements, but that's something that we did encourage the applicant to think about, because the units themselves are very generous, and at least to have some portion closer to 7 feet where you could actually utilize those balconies instead of just stand on them, or have a tiny table for two you have to kind of shimmy around. In terms of the frontage and the way the project meets the public realm, they're proposing a complete overhaul of the parkway. One tree does have to be removed for the new driveway, but the applicants are proposing to replace with 2 new street trees, which I think is really successful. Their plant palette was discussed heavily at design review and is also equally thoughtful. And we really appreciate the effort that the landscape architect has made on this project as well. There's a number of building performance and material efforts to bring the project into a more eco-friendly zone that's outlined in the memo. I won't get into it in detail, but a lot of successful strategies on that end. And then as an organizing tool for the whole building, there's a single loaded open air corridor on the east side of the project that really allows for through units to be cross ventilated in a true way. I know a lot of times on the green building checklists, the commission will see applicants who claim they have through units. These are actually designed as through units, and allows the tenants to really open up windows and get fresh air to go through them. And I think what's successful in this case is that the through unit design is both horizontal and vertically in sections. So it's nicely thought out. I have raised the issue with the applicant that there may be some building code issues with that open air corridor, but they've been in contact with building and safety and are confident that those concerns can be addressed. Another item I'd like to point out for the commission is the rear yard. Originally, this had been one of those bathtub buildings we've talked about where the rear wall for the subterranean parking was built to the rear property line. And again, compliments to the applicant. They've worked to pull that away from the rear yard. There's now a garden space and some native soil in the rear. And I would say though that it would have been even better had the landscape design taken advantage of where that native soil is. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between hardscape and softscape. And hopefully the applicant, as should this be approved, would think through that a little bit more in their final drawings for plan check. So overall, from a design and urban planning or urban programming perspective, this amended project is very well thought out, proportioned well, and of high quality because of a multitude of positive building performance and environmentally responsive design features and components that truly reflect and integrate substantively some of the city's goals and aspirations for climate change and sustainability. Urban design and architecture staff are recommending that the commission acknowledge that this design would be exemplary, worthy of others to follow in its approach to these aspects, and hopefully as part of your review, you will see some of the same things that we've seen, and just want to again say how appreciative we are of the applicant's team in refining the project, because in our opinion, it is substantively better than the previous project approved. And with that, I will turn it back to Roger Rath. Thanks, Roger.
Okay, thank you so much, Rick. So after the publishing of the agenda packet, staff has not received any correspondence regarding this project. There is a typographical error I would like to update for the record in the resolution. On page 18 of the resolution, condition 8.8a, the date should be updated from February 7th, 2019 to today's date, October 21st, 2021. In addition to the revised condition, staff would like to recommend one new condition for your consideration. As Rick had mentioned, there is currently an active project at this address, which will require this approval to supersede the prior approval, should this be approved. So condition 1.10 would read, with adoption of this resolution, all previous approvals established in resolution number PC 19-1305 and PC 19-1306 are hereby rescinded. So in conclusion, the project includes a net increase of 9 dwelling units to the city's housing stock, including one of which would be reserved for a very low income household. It is staff assessment that the design is consistent with the massing of the neighborhood building and those in the surrounding neighborhood. Overall, staff supports the project given that the project is well suited for the subject site and zoning district and is thoughtfully designed and complementary to the context of the neighborhood and meets the applicable development standards. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the project request subject to the findings and the condition of approval set forth in the draft resolution. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also available for any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Roger, and to Rick Abramson as well for his some of his thoughtful comments on the project. At this time, does anyone have questions for staff as pertains to what is actually in the staff report? Commissioner Dutta?
I just had actually a comment on the resolution. I believe in a couple of places, it still mentions that it's a 10-unit condominium building. So page 1, section 1, and then section 2. item 2.1 still mentions condominium. So I think that needs to be edited.
Is staff able to address that? Is there no tract map for this particular project?
Yeah, that's correct. This is just going to be a development and demolition permit, no subdivision attached to this.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you remind me, Roger, if there was a tract map proposed for this project originally? There was, correct?
Yeah, so the previous approval included a development permit and also a subdivision permit as well. But
okay.
Yeah, the condition will rescind both.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Dutta, for catching that. Do we have any other questions for staff? Again, Commissioner Lombardi, go ahead.
Or I just have one question. Actually, I may have two questions here. So the first question, I had asked this earlier in email to staff, and I was just wondering, Roger, there were some confusions, I think, in the date of the historic resource evaluation, which is called out a few times in the resolution. It looked like the cover page was dated 2017, and I think the footers were dated 2018. I was just wondering if we got any update on when that occurred, or if we can at least make a note to tidy that up in the final version of everything.
Sure. Yeah, so the correct date is April 2017. So the resolution does refer to that report as that. In regards to updating the HRA report with the correct date, I can look into that with the applicant as well.
Okay, so the footer in the historic resource evaluation, which I think was Exhibit B, that was incorrect. The footer had a future date essentially on that document. Just want to make sure we're.
No, that's correct. But I see the planning manager unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I think you were handling it fine, but I was just going to say that for identification purposes, we'll go with the date that is on the cover or the title page of the document. And so we'll have them clean that up. And
thank you. I guess the other question I have is more of just a clarification so that everyone's kind of understanding things the same way. Looking at the parking incentives, I realize that there's an incentive to go to half a parking space per bedroom, and there's a threshold that's called out in the municipal code where if you have at least 11% of very low income units, then you can apply for that incentive. So if you do the quick math, it would seem like it's 10%, but my understanding is that may be based off of the actual, I guess maybe you could clarify the exact terminology on this, but the original or permitted allowable number of units is what's used to create that calculation. Maybe you can help kind of clarify how we come to those numbers so everyone understands and make sure we're on the same page with it being 11%, even though the math on paper at first glance might look like it's less.
Sure, no problem. So with the lot size of 9,440, you take that and find the allowable density, the base density, which you divide it by, I believe, 1210. That equals out to 7.8 units, I believe. When you've provided an affordable housing unit, you round up. So that's a total of 8 units. The city code requires that out of those 8 units, 1 be affordable. Just the affordable housing section says anything with 10 or less, 1 affordable housing is required, or you could pay the in lieu fee. So we do that calculation of like how many units are off of the base density. So you would divide that 1 by 8, and that equals out to be 12.5%. So technically, according to that table, they have 12.5% of the base density that is very low income.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, good.
So it's base density.
Correct. The other
That's how we get to that number.
Correct. The other 2 units are just added through the density bonus.
Okay. And then can you confirm that currently in the resolution there we are not allowing for parking passes, only guest passes.
Correct. I believe it's in there.
I believe I saw it as well. Just want to make sure
10.6.
nothing was updated.
Correct. It's condition 10.6.
Okay, great. That was my last question.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Lombardi. And again, thanks for calling that out. Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, if not, we can move on to the applicant's presentation.
Chair Jones, my name is Jeff Seymour Consulting Group, residing in Westlake Village. And I must say, after Mr. Abramson's comments, I probably shouldn't say a word, but I will make a few comments. Again, I want to thank Mr. Rath and Mr. Abramson and Ms. Alkire for the attention and input they gave to us during this process. The project provides needed housing units in West Hollywood with the goal to meet the design requirements needed to earn the exemplary designation. And we appreciate all the work that the staff has done working with us to move to this point and this evening. With that, the project architect, Marcello Pozzi, will present the project. We are here to respond to any questions you may have. And again, my thanks. Marcello.
Thank you. Do you hear me well? Yes. Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hi, how are you? My name is Marcello Pozzi, resident of Los Angeles. I'm the architect of the project, and I'll share my screen and start the presentation. Everybody sees my screen? Yes. Okay.
No.
Actually, we can't see it yet.
Oh, sorry.
Marcello, sorry.
Okay.
There we go. We can see it now.
Perfect.
Maybe just put it into presentation mode so that it's full screen, if you can.
Full screen. Okay. Perfect. So I'll try to go fast because a lot of things have been said already. I'll just try to give an overall view of the design. So this is basically a slide to show the envelope, the minimum grading work that we're doing this time for a more sustainable building. And this is the envelope that is allowed and what we are well under the envelope allowed for this site. Some design references, in particular, as an attitude of how the roof and the landscape of the rooftop engages and interacts with the overall composition of the building. Again, the design is we wanted to do a very simple design, but with a strong architectural identity, contemporary, but quiet and serene in his appearance, and characterized by elegance and rigor and balanced proportion. In particular, you can see that the building is organized with a giant order. This is an architectural term that defines the facades, and then the big recess of the wood siding walls gives reliefs and creates a big porosity, and also the lines of the balcony in this way create a rhythm and balances the facade, and in a sense composes and gives a rhythm to the facade. The view from Westbourne again shows the clear composition that we adopted for the building, and again the big recess, recess that creates a big relief on the overall composition. From an aerial view, you can see what we did on the rooftop, as Rick Abramson already described. we are covering the units with the solar panels, and then the intimate space created for recreation as on the rooftop. Here is a view from the sidewalk, from one side, showing the interaction of the canopy that is well designed within the entire composition of the building. Is not just an add-on on the building. This is a view from the other side. You'll see later also the detail of the balcony is very important for the design. It covers the slab, it covers the cantilever slab of the balcony, and is done in flat bars, and so it becomes basically solid the moment you are angled to the building. On the back of the building, we have this garden, common open space that is a contemporary garden, very simple. The area where we have true soil is characterized by big canopy trees, and then the rest is quiet and serene overall, and engages and somehow speaks to the simple but elegant facade. This is another view of our little contemporary garden. We go fast through the plans. This is the site plan. As per fire comments, we had to have a 5 feet access all around. This was one of the important comments from fire. Going on the actual plans, we have the semi-underground parking. And very important, the front unit is a walk-up unit with this area that is dedicated for home office, very important nowadays, and gives a very option for even home business application. And it's required because, as everybody knows, the living areas of the units has to be at the first level within 5 feet from the sidewalk. Going to the plans, again follows the composition of the building. Is a single loaded corridor composition. The units are characterized by cross ventilation, very important. And also we chose this type of composition with the corridor on the east side to have less, to respect a little bit more the neighboring building, since we have the advantage that the west side presents is not an empty lot, because the lot is part of the neighboring building, but is a lot of space on the west side, the urban space. This is the third floor, same thing as the second floor. Important to note the exterior staircases that I'm going to show in the elevations. Then the fourth floor presents 4 units, which are loft units, so they are all walk-up units with the loft that becomes the opportunity for a large and generous home office use. This is the loft level, which is the 5th floor. The rooftop, as you see, the solar panels. This is the area dedicated on the solar panels, and also we have the eyebrow that gives us the opportunity for more energy, capturing more energy. A rendering from the rooftop. It shows you also the proportions that we used throughout the building. It shows you that actually the roof is designed as the 5th elevation of the project, and doesn't want to be. It wants to be really crafted as the entire building. A view from this what we call it intimate space, and also the special features that he has, these framed views of the cities. The palette is very, again, simple and elegant. We have wood siding, the metal railing, that painted metal railing that matches the light bronze anodized finish of the windows. We have the curtain steel edging for the landscape and a scored concrete on the feature wall of the garden.
2 minutes remaining.
Yes, I go very fast. This is the landscape. The landscape architect is here also to answer the question, and Jones. And then the elevations, important to see how the wanted and found proportion of the building, everything is proportion with the golden section rule. So we wanted to do something that is contemporary, is clearly modern, but also has a root in a classical proportion attitude. Here you see what Rick Abramson was describing, the cross ventilation that works very well in section, even on the 2 levels. A big feature, again, well, the west elevation speaks to itself. The east elevation, very important because again shows how the facade here is going to be animated by the 2 exterior staircases that complements the overall design. Here is the section with all the units. The detail that describes the major, let's say, detail section that describes the whole building. And you can see here the interaction of the landscape with the rooftop. And also the way the drainage is thought out to recycle as much as possible the water for irrigating the planters, but also it's important to note that all the downspouts in the building, they're going to be hidden, and also this giant order that I was describing before, again, is utilized also for distributing the downspouts of all the drainage. So the building is going to be detailed very cleanly throughout.
And time is up.
Yeah, and basically this is the last image that shows the lighting, very soft lighting of the project, and this is really the last view that shows how the building is going to be integrated in the street with the existing trees in front of it.
Thank you very much. Time is up, and I think that there will be an opportunity for you to address, any additional comments in your rebuttal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I prefer to hold questions for the applicant until after we've done public comment, but if anyone would like to ask questions of the applicant at this time, I'm certainly open to that. Does anyone have questions for the applicant, or can we hold? And take that as a no. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. David, do we have any speakers?
Thank you, Chair. I received no public comment speaker slips for this item. If there is anybody on the platform with us that would like to speak on 8615 West Knoll, please *9 for me at this time. And we'll give you 3 minutes to make a comment on this project. And Chair, it looks like we are all clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, to the applicant, would you like to rebut anything or add anything to your presentation from earlier?
Well, Chair Jones, I would have to be rebutting myself and the staff, and I don't really want to do that. So we thank you for giving us the opportunity to rebut.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seymour and Mr. Pozzi, for your presentation. So I think we can go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing, which actually just didn't end up transpiring for lack of public speakers. Again, if there is anybody at any time on the phone who ends up coming on, David, please do let us know. But I would like to go ahead and open up the floor to any of my fellow commissioners who would like to comment on the project, and we can move into deliberation. Commissioner Dutta.
Thank you. One question I had just had to do with access to the rear open space from, I suppose, any of the floors. If the applicant can just explain what the general path of travel would be, I'm assuming it's from the second floor, but if you can explain that. And also there seems to be like the opening on the side. Is it just that narrow opening that then gives you access to the rear from within the building?
Yes, can I share? Let me share again the screen. This one. Okay, so sorry, these are all my scribbles. So the building is okay. So this is the underground, the semi-underground parking. The actual first floor, because of the slope of the site, is this one. So basically, from the open corridor of this level, which is the second floor, you are correct. Every unit, either you come down from the elevator, and then you walk this way, and then it ramps up here about 30 inches, and then you get to the common open space. And from this other side, there is a stair that is from the other side, from the sidewalk, let's say. This is the handicap entrance, which I switch between two floors, but this is the handicap entrance, access to the building. And also, this stair was requested by fire, but it gave us a beautiful opportunity because it's going to be only accessible by the firefighters to go all around the building, but also by this unit, which is the back lower unit, has a very generous deep terrace that is basically 30 inches below the the common open space here in the rear. Here is the difference in level. And basically, this unit can have a private entrance from this stair as well. So out of the constraint from fire, we were able to gain an important feature for the back unit that offsets the fact that it's the back lowest unit, but has a very generous terrace and a private entrance, in a sense, from the outside. Did I describe everything?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And then my last question just went back to comment that Rick Abramson made, and it was also included in the staff report about the balconies on the west side of the building. The existing plans having them at 5 feet wide. And was there any consideration given to them being wider? And is that something that is feasible in your opinion, or what are your thoughts on that particular comment from?
Yes, so, not the majority of the balcony, yes, are 5 feet deep because we are exchanging what is called the exchange of the common open space. So we are allowed to do 5 feet deep. We find both myself and my client, we found that it's sufficient, and we like this type of proportion of the balconies. We have to note that it's important to note that, for example, here we have a 10-foot terraces for this unit and 7 feet balcony for. So this unit, for example, have a portion of one balcony of 7 feet and one long balcony and 5 feet. Important to note that these balconies, yes, are 5 feet, but they're very long, and they are also. I know I disagree a little bit with Rick Abramson. I agree with him on many things, but only on the balcony depth, I a little bit disagree. I think that 5 feet are very. It's a generous enough dimension, and I actually have a rendering of an extra rendering. Let's see if I can put it up. If you can see, There we go. This one is a rendering of how a 5-foot balcony can be used. You see that there is the balcony goes across 2 different areas. So this is the bedroom in this unit, and then this is the living room, and this shows basically a typical setting with 24 inches outdoor chairs and the possibility of having a small dinner or lounge. And then again, because they are long, they offer opportunity for planting, and we find it. We are very happy with the 5 feet. Yes, but we did consider, I like all the other suggestions that we discussed with staff and Rick Abramson. We really consider it. We also thought that because we are providing it for 3 units, even larger, even deeper balcony than 5 feet, than 7 feet, because we're providing 10 feet, we found our solution, and we stand by our decision, basically.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's the last question I had.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Dutta. Who would like to speak next? Commissioner Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just a couple of quick comments, and then I have my questions. So I'm always happy to see additional housing stock. Very happy that this project has a very low income affordable housing unit. I'm impressed with the strategic placement of the solar panels while still making the roof a great community space. I do have a question about the garage entrance. Looking at the CC section detail of the plans, it looks like the awning of the parking section is laminated and tempered glass. It appears to be a 9-foot shelf, and it seems a bit invasive, and it looks like it would take quite a bit of upkeep. Between leaf litter and all the other things that could fall on that, like, who is responsible for cleaning the glass panels?
It would be the management of the building. But I want to note that the glass is only for the 4 feet of the 4 feet above the entry staircase. Basically, if I may. Let me share 1 second again the screen. So basically, this is what you are referring to. Is the
yes.
Section? This is basically, if I go now on the view of it, which is, there we go. This one. So. The glass part is only here because in order to provide, shelter to the staircase, and then everything else is basically an open trellis.
But it's 9 feet total, correct? It protrudes 9 feet from the building.
Yeah, 9 feet protruding out. Yes, from the building. Yes.
Okay. And my other question is the south elevation facing the street, it gets all this lovely greenery, and on the north elevation that's meant to be the inviting area for the residents in the rear garden, it's just a stark white wall. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts about how to make it more inviting, and I have a similar question about the west elevation where there is the stark white space there as well.
Yeah, it is so the north. I think you mean the east elevation, the one with the balcony, the one with the corridor, basically.
Well, let's start with the north elevation first. And I think
yes. So the north elevation, it is again, we like as a composition of the overall building, we like the simplicity of the facade, but is not. I don't think we can consider it a stark white facade, because we have a big component as to counterbalance the simplicity of the white and regular facade with this. There is the staircases here that really animates the overall composition. So there is, and also of course the greenery that falls down the rooftop. So it is also a decision that has to do with the overall composition of the building, and it kind of, again, we want to have a quiet, I understand the comment, you can consider it stark, but we feel it's really simple, simple and elegant, and a bit rigorous, you can say, but we really play with the counterbalance between the animation of the up and down, the life of the stair, let's say, the counterbalance the simplicity and the rigor of this part. And on the other facade, which is the east, is a little bit the same type of thought. The balconies, which they are open, they create a lot of course, a lot of shadow lines, or at least, it's a very porous building, but also, what can I say, is the beauty of this facade should be seen as the contrast, again, between the staircases, exterior staircases, and the simplicity of the facade. And it is also very well, let's say, proportioned as all the other facades, but we decide to have this type of design because it really makes sense with the overall, when you think about the building as an overall piece of architecture, you can see that it really makes sense also because of the composition and of the distribution, the composition and the distribution of the floor plan inside. So it follows really the distribution of the units, and we find it it was thought out this way. We also considered to put, for example, to change materials or to, in a sense, making it more complicated. But it seemed to me and to our team a little bit like, to force something that it was not the right thing for this type of approach and this type of building.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thomas, do you have any additional comments or questions you'd like to ask?
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Who would like to go next? I'm going to go last, so there's no changing that out. Commissioner Caballero, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I've commented on this project, 2 design reviews and 1 planning commission already, and Marcelo's probably tired of hearing my comments.
Oh, no, I like it.
I know, but I'm just going to say I so appreciate how committed you are to your design aesthetic and to the rigor of putting this type of architectural language together. And tonight almost feels like we've just repeated our last design review with all the comments that have been made thus far. And your comments and your rebuttal every time is exactly the same. And I have to appreciate your commitment to coming up with such a refined, elegant language. And in today's kind of Instagram inspired or Instagram influenced architecture, sometimes people, I don't think, understand sort of the rigor of what it takes to make a really elegant building. And outside of the comments, that Rick Abramson made about the back area, and I do believe that maybe from a landscape perspective that could be improved. I've come to really appreciate this building, and I think I was probably one of the made most harshest comments at our last planning commission. And the voyage that this project has taken from there to here, I think is really commendable. And I'm really impressed by, again, your commitment to the development of a building that is this formally composed. And I don't have more to say other than thank you. And I would like to make a motion to approve the project according to the staff report with the addition of the condition 1.10. And I don't mean that to say that, we're not going to make further comments, but you've heard all my comments, you've responded to all my comments, and the comments that you felt were not applicable, you've given sufficient reason as to why they're not. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing this building come up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caballero. Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Commissioner Caballero, I don't think you could have said it any better. I think you summarized this all great, and honestly, I don't have too much to add, perhaps because of some of the participation in the design review meeting. And as you noted, there's been some similarities in terms of how the discussion has progressed and what we're talking about. If I were to just throw in a few sort of comments, I think the rendering of the balcony maybe didn't convince me as much that the space was more usable in all honesty. But that said, I think people will appreciate it. I think they will make good use of it. I understand some of the constraints of the site. And, I've also kind of questioned some of the facades where we have these, there's the north facade and some of the other facades where you have a sort of white blank canvas. But I think we also need to remember that this is a pretty compact site, and those views are really going to be at oblique angles for most people. So where you look at the rendering straight on or the elevation straight on, that's not how most people will see it. They'll probably see a smaller portion of the building, or they'll look at it in those sort of angles. So those are things maybe of note that to me, I think kind of make me not worry about those aspects of the design nearly as much. And I mean, personally, I think I feel a sort of connection to this type of architecture and simplicity. I know a lot of people, some people may find it a little more severe or challenging, but I think it's really quite elegant. And I think that the applicants really stood behind the design, and I can understand why. When you think about the type of building that would be a good building in West Hollywood, it hits a lot of those with circulation, outdoor spaces, kind of fitting into the footprint despite having this strong verticality to it. It still doesn't feel like it's, overwhelming the compact site that it's in or the adjacent buildings. Other things that we talked about in the design review subcommittee, I think that we made a note that the building may feel a little bit severe, but it probably will stand the test of time and appreciation over time. I think we also made a note about the color temperature of some of the lighting, and it looks like that's been picked up in some of the notes as well, so that's good to see. But overall, I'm certainly in full support of this project, and I'd be happy to second a motion if there aren't other comments, or if other people want to comment first, or Acting Chair Jones, if you have anything to add.
You can second it without there being, we can still make comments, I believe. I do want to give everyone an opportunity to comment, but I think you can still make the second, Commissioner Lombardi, and that is noted. Commissioner Vincent?
Thanks, Vice Chair. I do have one question. As we talked about, it was brought up Unit 3 and that 5-foot access that the fire department was requesting. And you mentioned that allowed that unit to have a larger private open space. That concerns me, because if that's a 5-foot space for the fire department to use, what's preventing that tenant from putting furniture that obstructs that pathway? This is a question to the applicant.
Yes. No, well, the fire department, they're not, the concern is that they needed 5 feet clear. Well, the depth of the terraces is not because of the fire department. We would have had the same, we would have had those terraces anyway. The things that, the advantage that the fire department requested the stair, this stair here that goes up from one level, from this level to the terraces, here. It will be. They're not concerned about the furniture. Yes, probably there will be a little bit of guidelines for the tenants not to clutter it with fixed furniture or with big, unmovable pieces. But other than that, it's not a problem for the fire department. The important thing was to have the 5 feet, the clear 5 feet path that they can utilize.
Yeah, but what my concern is a 5 foot clear is important for them to access the building in case of an emergency. And if someone were to obstruct that with patio furniture, what would be preventing someone from doing that?
Well, no, there would be. I mean, technically, we can, again, it can be again a direction from the manager, from the owners, not to clutter these 5 feet. Nothing will prevent that. It's just something that the manager will need to keep an eye on for the life of the building, basically, to make sure. It's actually, this is a situation that happens all the time. Like, for example, the same way in the public open space here, nothing would prevent people to move these chairs and put them on this area or do all kinds of stuff. But it's a little bit left also to the responsibility of the manager and the tenants as well. Yeah. We don't want to basically, the fire department didn't request us to limit the use of that area. They just requested us to give them an accessible path through a gate that will have a key in a lockbox in the front of the building. These were basically the requests from the fire department.
Right, but those pathways have to be kept clear at all times. So my next question will be
I can
for staff.
jump in really fast on that.
Thanks,
if
Jennifer.
you'd like. So yeah, the pathways need to be reasonably clear. It's not like a fire lane where you don't, where the trucks have to go in. This is something that a firefighter would be going through, and a chair or a small table or something like that, they can move that out of the way if they need to in an emergency, as long as it's not obstructed by something that's more permanent or more difficult to move. And that's something that, like any user of a building, you just have to know where your pathways are and do the responsible thing to keep those as clear as possible. But it doesn't have to be completely clear of all objects.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That might help.
So would we be able to, is there some type of, is there a way to condition that to make sure that the property management, or maybe it's put in the lease, that they're known, I just worry about someone really spreading out and putting a table and chairs there. And kind of just extending their whole patio to that whole space. Because, you know, an emergency could happen, you know, once in a blue moon. And after years of just kind of using that as their space, easily cluttering it up. Is there a way to condition that?
We might be able to come up with a condition. I think we can think about that. You know, I think it's more likely that someone will recognize that that's a pathway than that they'll come back to the development permit and see what the conditions are. You know, regardless of what the development permit conditions are, those spaces need to be kept clear. And so if there's a nuisance or there's a problem, code compliance can go out and recognize that there's an obstruction. So I don't know that there needs to be a condition, but if we want to say that there's no, you know, it's hard to find a threshold for that. It would kind of.
Yeah, because if I can, sorry, Jennifer, if I can add another thing, it's maybe I misspoke in a sense that, again, I made it sound like it's a fire lane. It's not a fire lane. It's for example, the firefighter needs to have the access to the balcony in the front of the building, and which they have furniture and they have no problem. They just needed to get to that level to access the building of the back units. So it's not, again, the like Jennifer was saying, the loose furniture are not a problem. Of course, we cannot put a concrete planter in those 5 feet. So that's the difference. They just want to be able to access that area. Yeah. The important thing was the stair that gets the fire department to that level, basically, on that side of the building.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand all that. I build sites all the time where, you know, we have to provide a lane for firefighters on the roof of our buildings, as well as egress, ingress, and for them to access and you know, shutoffs and whatnot. So I just worry about someone really spreading out and using that space. I get that they can move a table and chairs, but depending on the table, it could be pretty large and heavy. So, and that could be a safety issue. That could be, you know, the difference between someone's life, right? If you have a paramedics crew that they could enter through the side and someone can open the gate for them, they enter through the side to get to somebody to provide CPR, AED and whatnot. That's the difference of, you know, an obstacle that gets in the way of someone getting to save someone's life. So if my other fellow commissioners don't feel it needs to be conditioned, I just want to make sure, you know, I get that code compliance can be called, but someone has to call code compliance. So unless a neighbor is looking down and goes, hey, they're not supposed to have that there. You know, so many of us don't realize, you know, that's not part of their balcony or so unless someone calls code compliance and unless the manager is on top of it, I just don't know how it would be noticed.
So I would just, I'm sorry, I would just add that in either case, whether it's in the conditions or not, code compliance would need to be called if there was a situation where it was becoming a problem. In both cases, the manager would have to be vigilant or keep track of what's happening in that side yard. So, you know, and I think in any side yard, there's situations where there are trash cans or, you know, planter pots or chairs, just even if it's not a designated open space. And I get that it becomes more problematic if it's a designated open space, but again, you know, it's sort of the same response and the same vehicles that get that response. I mean, not literal vehicles like emergency, but the same ways that the response is triggered, whether the condition exists or not. And the issue with putting a condition on it is that I don't know where we would put the threshold. Like, what can you put out there, what you can't and I don't think we're prepared to draw that line tonight. So we would end up putting in something that's fairly open-ended, like, cannot be unreasonably obstructed or something like that, so that we have a fail-safe in there. But I think that exists whether we put the condition in or not, because it does need to stay reasonably open.
All right, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Benson. I think everyone has had an opportunity to speak now. If you have not, please raise your hand. The night is drawing on. So the best part about being chair is that usually most people have said everything that you want to say. I think most of my questions, I think I was probably one of the 2 or 3 people on commission at the time that we originally saw this project, and I really liked it then, and I believe I voted to approve it. I think there were very real questions about the viability of the construction as it was originally proposed in terms of cost and in terms of ease of construction. And I understand that those have been, that's why you're here again. Also appreciate the thoughtful design. I think my questions about, the balcony was the balconies were the same as my fellow commissioners. It sounds like the architect has very strong feelings about that, and I think I'm inclined to agree with Commissioners Caballero and Lombardi. If that's the aesthetic that you wish to adhere to, and you do feel strongly about it. I've had balconies that were smaller than 5 feet, and as long as we're not calling it a balcony when it's really a Juliet balcony, which it is not, a term to which I object, but that's for another time. I'm comfortable with that. I also would say, in the way of conditioning, and Commissioner Benson, I very much appreciate your comments about safety and about fire, especially given your daily experience working in these environments. But my inclination would be not to condition it, because I think that there is an amount of trust that we have to give to the company or the group that ends up managing the property, and that it is in their best interest to make sure that those kinds of paths are cleared in the way that they are supposed to be. So again, it would be my inclination not to condition it, only because if we did, we have to pick something that then is potentially precedential, and I would rather not do that this evening. But if my other commissioners have very strong feelings about it, we can have a discussion. But I would, I guess, third my fellow commissioners motion, and then we have a motion on the floor and a second on the floor to move this project. So unless we want to have further discussion, which we can, or we can call the question. Jennifer, please go ahead. Sorry.
Just wanted to, there was one more change or a couple of changes in the resolution referring to condominium. Roger, did you want to read those changes into the record, please?
Sure, no problem. So it's going to be condition, or I believe section 1. I guess I would read the whole paragraph. I would say, an application for demolition permit 21-005 and development permit 21-0005 was filed on March 25th, 2021 by Jeffrey Seymour on behalf of the property owner 8615 Westnall LLC. The application proposed a demolition of a single-family dwelling and the construction of a 10-unit apartment building, not condominium, with 1 affordable unit and semi-subterranean parking. The project is located within the R3C residential multifamily medium density zone, and the application was deemed complete on July 16, 2021. And the update would be to condition 2.1. This approval is for the demolition of a single-family dwelling and detached garage, and the construction of an approximately 9,440 square foot, 5-story, 10-unit apartment building with a semi-subterranean parking at a property located at 8615 Westnall Drive.
Great, thank you. Do we have any further discussion on the item, or are we ready to call the question? Oh, actually, there is something. I'm a little rusty on my chairship right now. I should have done this several steps ago, but we need to do disclosures for posterity for the purposes of the record. Do we have any disclosures from anyone on commission? Commissioner Lombardi.
Yeah, just a really simple one. I had a brief discussion with the applicant. It was extremely brief, essentially no questions, but I do want to go on record that we had a quick phone call.
And did it,
only
was it
briefly
a
touched on-
conversation? Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Only briefly touched on items included in the staff report and clarified that I had no questions at this time.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Thomas, I saw your hand raised.
Yes,
Maybe
I had
I
a call
didn't.
with Jeff Seymour and yes, I had a call with Jeff Seymour and everything we discussed was included in the staff report.
Anyone else? I just want to say for the record that Mr. Seymour did call me and leave a voice message, and I communicated to him that I did not have any questions about the project or any of the items contained in the staff report. Unless we have any other questions, sorry about that, but I want to make sure it's in the record. I think we can go ahead and call the question. David, can you take roll?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Acting Chair. Commissioner Carvalero.
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi.
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dutta.
Yes.
Acting Chair Jones.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Amending of the resolution that was presented, showing Chair Hoopengarner as recused. And we have an appeal process. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you, David. And with that, we will move on to our next item, which is item 12, unfinished business. There is none. Item 13 is excluded consent calendar. There is none. Item 14A is items from staff, planning managers update. I don't think Robin Eason is on this call, but Jennifer, do you have anything you'd like to?
Yes, I can update on the upcoming agendas. Excuse me. So on November 4th, there are 2 billboard items listed. I think both of those have been continued to this date, and both of them will be continued again. I think they're just trying to work out the final details in the agreements there. So those will be, so the only item that I believe we'll have on November 4th for discussion is 8746 Sunset. It's changing some conditions for a project that, some conditions from like 2001. On November 18th, we should be hearing those 2 billboards. We will also be hearing another environmental impact report comments for 8555 Santa Monica Boulevard. And I think that we have a tree canopy standards item, which Rick can confirm. Okay,
yes,
coming on November 18th also. December 2nd is got the 1282 Fairfax, which is the Fairfax and Fountain Crescent Heights Methodist Church residential project. That's the only item we have for December 2nd. And then we'll talk about the schedule for the upcoming year. And that will be our last meeting for 2021. Excuse me. I will go ahead and talk about subcommittees while I'm talking. I can find it. So there aren't any more design review subcommittee meetings designated for the rest of the year. There's one meeting for this Sunset Arts and Advertising subcommittee for December 9th that does not have any items. We would like to reinstate that as a subcommittee meeting. I don't know if that's something that we can do this evening. City Attorney, if you want to weigh in, is that something we can do now, is reinstate one of the design review subcommittee meetings? So I suppose it would be a special meeting, even though it's on that particular night.
What's the date? I'm just pulling
December
up your
9th.
attachment.
Yeah, sorry, December 9th.
Jennifer, that also is a night of the SASE meeting in December, correct?
That would be the night of the SASE meeting in December, but there aren't any items. So we want to snag
Okay.
that date back.
So there
since we
wouldn't be
haven't
there
had
wouldn't be
any.
the potential for a double, any overlap.
No.
Okay.
No, that's why we want to take that meeting back. Yeah, so that's the idea. So if you, for the members of the design review subcommittee, want to let us know your availability for that, that would be helpful for us.
Yeah, why don't you get everyone's availability and then you can note it on the next meeting agenda as a formal change.
Yeah. Okay, so if you know now, great. And if not, then you can let me know. And then as for, sorry, I'm just pulling up the SASE meeting. Okay, so that was the only meeting. The other SASE meeting would have been on November 11th, which is a holiday. So that's it for 2021 for that subcommittee also. And there's nothing coming up for long range project subcommittee.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Item 15 is public comment. David, do we have anyone on the line who'd like to speak?
Chair, I received no public comments for this general item. If there is anybody left on the call with us, star 9 for me real quick. And we'll give you 3 minutes to speak, but it looks like we are all clear, Chair.
Great, thank you. Item 16 is items from commissioners. I think we can potentially roll in, well, I don't want to speak out of turn. Commissioner Thomas.
I have a parliamentary question, and I apologize, I might be confused. For the item the hearing that we just did, I feel like, maybe again, I could be confused, but I feel like the motion was made during the questions for the applicant and that we never actually closed the hearing and did deliberation, or?
So I did close the
like
public comment portion of the hearing before we moved into deliberation. So any questions that were asked of the applicant were part of our deliberation process.
Okay, I guess I am, because I wasn't ever aware that we were in deliberation. It felt like we were still in the applicant question, and then we went into the vote. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on when everything happened, because it felt like the motion was made during the applicant, while we were asking questions of the applicant, and that we never actually went into the deliberation.
I apologize if that wasn't clear, and I'm sorry to anyone else if that wasn't clear. Lauren Langer, do you have any comments about that?
I do remember Vice Chair Jones, you saying closing the public comment portion of the hearing. I think what happened was during deliberation, some commissioners still had some questions and seemed to continue asking questions of the applicant, which is a little non-traditional, but I do think it was in the deliberation portion, which is when the motion was made. We can try and be more clear.
Okay. Yeah, I really feel like we were still just in applicant questions. It's not a huge big deal. I was never aware that we actually went into deliberation. Next thing, there was a vote, which is fine for the most part, but there just wasn't a clear delineation of where we were in the process for me.
Sorry, I think I said fairly clearly that we were moving into deliberation. And again, I apologize if that's not the case. I'm a little rusty on chairship, but I do really try to adhere to a system in which we are, closing the public comment portion of the hearing and then giving everyone who's on the commission an opportunity to comment and asking questions of the applicant if relevant, especially given that there was no public comment. So again, I apologize if that wasn't clear. I don't know if we need to, again, sincere apologies if there was confusion about that.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Do we have commissioners or comments from any of the other commissioners at this time? No. Any notes about subcommittee management? Oh, Commissioner Lombardi, please go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, my comment was about subcommittee management if we were heading into that. So dates are fine for me, as I would be on SASE or design review subcommittee for the same date. So it's probably more a question for the other commissioners, but just wanted to go on record to say that works for me.
I'm sorry, everyone. My AirPods died and I'm having trouble reconnecting. If no one has anything else at this time, I think we can go ahead and adjourn. We will adjourn to our regularly scheduled meeting, which is on November the 4th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you for coming tonight and look forward to seeing you all at our next meeting.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.